is excellent for, I will turn my brain off and give the authority to you. To go do, I mean, look, it was right after 9/11. Like, the level to which Dick Cheney and George W. Bush used to fearmonger. Dick Cheney, the Vice President of the United States of America, who is a bit more than just your average Vice President, he said, it's not a matter of if, it's when. There will be another 9/11 attack. They were trying to tell the Americans right after 9/11 to be in a constant state of fear.
Do you remember the warnings where they had colors? Where they had colors?
Whatever. Yeah. And then one day they'd be like, it's up to yellow.
Yeah.
And everyone, we were still traumatized from 9/11. But the thing about it is that they knew what they wanted to do. They knew the policy they wanted to start in Baltimore. And it was the mix of they hate us, the big lie, which was they hate us for our freedom. It was like really the big lie after 9/11. It was like, because the American people very organically wanted to know what the beef was. Like 9/11 happened, everybody was like, yo, why do they hate us? What's this beef about? And their answer was they hate you for your freedom, and by the way, this is going to happen again. So be terrified. Second off, understand that they're so irrational that their beef with you is that, like, your grandma can go to the grocery store. So what do you do with that? Other than say what the American people said, which is George W. Bush, you have a blank check to go attack whoever you want to, and we'll support you.
Yeah, I remember feeling that way. Right? I remember feeling it's up to these fucking guys, these hard-nosed generals and military leaders that are, these are the guys that are going to protect us now. We're going to put all our faith in them. This shit is real. And it's going on. But I had no idea. This is, so 2001, I was into UFOs. I was into Bigfoot. I was into stupid shit. You know, I was into fun, stupid shit.
Right.
You know, me and Eddie Bravo would get high and watch space documentaries and freak out about aliens. You know, the stupid shit. But then the Patriot Act came out. And I was like, okay, what the fuck is this? Like, what is indefinite detention mean? When they signed the NDAA? Wait a minute, what are you talking about? What is the month, what it rhymes with cunt, the act that Obama passed in 2015 that allowed them to use censorship, or excuse me, propaganda on American citizens?
Yeah.
Month,
Something like that, yep.
It's like, okay.
Ray Lewis, two-time world champion. Ed Reed, Hall of Famer.
Let's get Kevin.
Kevin just turned $5 into $150 in bonus bets.
At what point in time do I start getting really fucking suspicious?
Yep.
Yeah, I had read one book a long time ago that really fucked me up. This book called Best Evidence about the Kennedy assassination. And unfortunately, I read it right before I went on stage. I was by myself. I was in Philadelphia, and I was headlining. And this is like when I was just starting to headline, right? And so, had a show Thursday, killed. Everything's great. Went back to my hotel room. Nothing to do. Read this fucking book for like 6 hours. Freaked the fuck out. Showed up at the show like ashen-faced. Like, oh my God, they killed the president. Like, I had never even considered that before that book.
Right.
I never even thought that there's like secret government agencies that plot against the president. I thought that's the fucking man, and everybody works together. And me, Harvey Oswald was like, oh my gosh! And I fucking bugged. And I apologized to the staff. I apologized to the manager. I go, listen, I fucked up, and I read this book right before I got here. It really fucked me up. It's done that before, man. I've had.
You need, when you have your mind blown like that, you need time after that before you make it funny.
Oh,
like it takes time to like then almost come back to it.
You should never
later.
engage in that kind of stuff like right before you go on stage. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Anything real and ominous and so I had a second show and it went great. But I was like, okay, I can't ever do that again. But that started me. But that was just peripheral. It was just the JFK thing. I was only interested in that. I didn't get into Nixon. I didn't get into Vietnam. I didn't get into any of that stuff. But September 11, 2001, in the beginning, it was wonderful. After the attack, everyone was so friendly. It's terrible that this thing happened. It's terrible that these people died. it made me think, like, every now and then, we need to get bitch slapped. You know, it's like when you see people, like, getting in people's faces for, like, waving an American flag, fuck you, fascist, a bitch slap every now and then, like, that guy might go, fucking, what was I doing? I just ran up to that veteran and I got in his face because I want to impress my lesbian girlfriend. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? I don't know how to fight. Now I got a concussion and this guy bitch slapped me. It's on TikTok. Fuck. You know, like, you need that sometimes just as, like, a course reset. And I felt like, as a country, we had been doing shady shit all around the world forever. And there's real war happening everywhere, but we're super lucky because we're separated by oceans. And
All right, so as we
too
get
much
the stand-up only fight underway, just a quick reminder on the rule set: no grappling or wrestling of any
and when I
type.
was in New York
And
City
fighters
afterwards,
also
we were filming
cannot
Fear Factor
follow
one
up
day,
with
and
ground
everyone was
strikes
so
on the canvas.
cool.
So if
And
you found
firemen were rock stars.
Yep.
Cops were rock stars. Everybody was thanking them. Everybody was thanking them for their service. It was
couple of
great. You know,
chins
this
here
fireman
being
from
tested early.
me and the Fear Factor crew. These guys were fucking. It's like I was hanging out with Brad Pitt. It was nuts. Everybody was so
High
thankful.
amplitude elbow here at
Where did
12.
that go?
Yeah, I was there. I was in New York City on 9/11, and I remember. So I was in Brooklyn, like only a few miles from the World Trade Center, and like,
Did you physically see it?
no, I saw. So I remember seeing. You know, I think so. When I got out of school, I was in high school. I was a senior in high school, and we got out. One of the girls like forged a note. Said it was from our parents or something like that. I forget exactly how it worked, but we got it. It was like I was friends with the security guard. I used to buy weed from him. It was a different time. But you know, it was a different time. Pre-9/11, we were just all hanging out buying weed from security guards at schools. But so he let us out. So I remember I'm pretty sure when we came to Flatbush Ave, we saw like there was smoke in the air. Both the towers had fallen by the time we got out. But there were people. So the subways had been out for a while. And where I was like on Flatbush Avenue. If anyone knows Brooklyn, it's like Flatbush and 7th Avenue. So this is like, it's kind of a straight shoot down to the Manhattan Bridge, and then the Brooklyn Bridge is down there too. But the Brooklyn Bridge you can walk over. And so at this point already, people who were down in the financial district had just decided to walk back to Brooklyn because they realized they weren't going to get a cab or get on the subway. And so you'd see just like one guy in a suit and tie covered in soot, head to toe, like walking up like, oh, he must have just been down there and walked up. But I remember, now this is in Brooklyn, but even there it was very busy. But people were stopping and asking each other, people who you would pass on the street but never talk to, were stopping and asking everyone, how's your family, everyone okay, all right, are you fine? Like there was this like community spirit that you just you don't typically get in New York City. There's just too many people. You can't talk to everyone.
Yeah.
But that part of it was kind of beautiful. And then, of course, governments do what they do and immediately manipulated that into launching wars that they wanted from before 9/11 that had absolutely nothing to do with 9/11, which is, you know,
Also, the Patriot Act was a bunch of shit they had tried to pass for a while, for years. And everyone's like, what are you fucking crazy?
Well, this is the thing, and I guess maybe it's partly like my age, because I was 18 at the time, and this is like my coming of age, you know, time.
Right.
But I will never stop being furious about all that shit. And this is like, still to this day, I'm sure you see it when I'm on podcasts with you and I'm doing debates and stuff. But I'm so angry over the war in Iraq and the subsequent wars and, you know, Libya and Syria and Somalia and Yemen and all of that. Specifically because, like, all these guys, the neoconservatives, the N-word that I'm not supposed to bring up. Right. I wrote a book called Neoconservatism, Why We Need It. But when I say the word neoconservatism, be careful what you're watering here or something like that.
Is that what they said?
They,
I didn't know that this was an issue. That you can't discuss neoconservatism?
well, that's what Douglas said when I was on with him. He said, the N-word. When I brought it up, and then said, I'm watering something because I mentioned Wolfowitz, you know.
Okay, so that's anti-Semitism.
Right.
So he's really starting to put together some
Yes,
significant body shots here. These are going to take their toll as this fight goes on.
Neoconservatism, why would that be a thing that you can't discuss? That sounds crazy. The rivalries, the marching bands, the upsets. Saturdays just got way more fun. College football is back. Think you know the game? Put your college football knowledge to the test with DraftKings Sportsbook and turn your picks into big payouts. From live betting during the game to rivalry week odds boosts and so much more, DraftKings Sportsbook has everything you need to stay in the action from kickoff to final whistle. Whether you're betting on your go-to making moves mid-game as the momentum shifts. Saturdays are yours to own with DraftKings Sportsbook.
Let's see who has
Here's something special for first-timers. New customers bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code ROGAN. That's code ROGAN for new customers. Get $300 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. In partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Law in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.com/party.
Well, I mean, I'd say the answer is that those guys got into power. They really hijacked American foreign policy after 9/11 because they happened to all be in power in the Bush administration. Then 9/11 happened on their watch. But if you go back and read the shit they read, and I will never stop talking about this because it's just too goddamn crazy. But if you read all of these guys, the guys who were in the George W. Bush administration, I mean, like the signatories on the Project for a New American Century, which was their think tank, PNAC as it's called, were like Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld and Paul Wolfowitz and Fife and Richard Pearl and David Wormser and the whole group who took over the government were all, and they wrote explicitly in the Project for a New American Century that they were like, look, okay, the Soviet Union has collapsed. We are, for the first time in human history, like the lone superpower in the world. So what we should do right now is fight multiple wars because no one threatens us. And so therefore, we should fight multiple wars. Right now, we have an opportunity to remake the world, overthrow the old Soviet sock puppet states, install our own states there, and guarantee, as the name says, the new American century of dominance, the 21st century. And they specifically said they want to overthrow Saddam Hussein, and then they specifically said and now this is something that the 9/11 truthers really held on to. I'm not sure, I think they might be overplaying their hand a little bit here, but they say, there's one document in the Project for a New American Century, you can find it online, where they straight up say, they go, now look, this is what we want to do, but we're unlikely to get mass American support for it, short of another Pearl Harbor type event. And so a lot of people, like Alex Jones and a lot of the 9/11 truthers, will point to this phrase and go, see, this is the proof. They knew they needed another Pearl Harbor, so they planned their own Pearl Harbor. Now, that is not necessarily true. It doesn't necessarily prove that, but it certainly does change the way you think about their mind state when they sit there watching the towers get attacked. And they all, at the very least, they all went, we got it.
You know, Alex Jones predicted 9/11 in July.
Yeah. But that's not quite as unique as I think some people think it is.
Really?
Well, like, people, so like,
You ever hear how he said it?
yeah, I've heard the stuff. It was pretty good. I mean, I'm not like taking anything away from that. He was right. But there were a bunch of people who predicted it. Ron Paul himself predicted it. Let's just say, no, I don't know about that. That is pretty impressive. But at the same time, you know, that's true, but the World Trade Center was attacked by Al-Qaeda guys in 93. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Adrian Belushi has the funniest joke about that. I believe so. Did you ever hear Adrian's joke about that? I don't want to butcher it on your show, but Adrian Belushi is a hilarious comedian. She had a joke about how, you know, in that song where Biggie goes, time to get paid, blow up like the World Trade, but they bleep World Trade now, and then her bit is how they didn't bleep, like he was talking about the first one, but they bleep it because of the second, you know, the towers came down, but then her bit is just like, we go like, that wasn't enough of a tragedy to make it bleep. It's like, it's like, when it's you people that makes it, it was cool. But then a lot of people thought that she's phenomenal joke right there.
Well, it was a different time. Back then, they would have never bleeped anything. They didn't bleep the N-word. They didn't bleep anything.
Yeah, it was the Wild West.
Well, it's weird when you hear about. So, I don't know if I fully buy into any of this, but as a caveat before I get rolling. But when people discuss the intelligence agencies and their role in hip-hop, especially gangster rap. Like, I remember the very first time I listened to NWA. And I think I told Ice Cube when he was here, I was on a fucking Stairmaster in Revere, Massachusetts, and I was listening to Fuck the Police. Fuck the Police is coming straight from the underground. I was like, what is this? It was a cassette Walkman, or maybe it was a CD, but it was probably a cassette Walkman. And I was like getting my cardio.
They were better for working out. They didn't skip.
They got good with the CD after a while. It didn't skip, but you had to set it on. You had to set it on the treadmill,
And you had to
keep
hit
it
that
on
shot
shot.
thing, and then that would eat your battery so quickly. Like you get 3 songs in and be like, all right, you have to go to the gym with like spare batteries.
Still, to me, it was so insane that I could carry music with me to the gym. Like that's incredible. Because you go to the gym and you're the worst Poison song playing. No disrespect to Poison, or something. Like, God, I can't get into this. I'm trying to get pumped here, man. This is fucking bullshit music. Like someone's in charge of the station that they pick on the radio. Just to be able to carry it. But that moment of hearing that music, I was like, this is celebrating crime. Like, this is nuts. And murdering prostitutes. And like, this is crazy that this is like a major record label put this out. And I was only 21. And I was just sitting there going, I can't even believe this is real. Like, really into Ice Cube, really into Ice-T. I listened to that when I was delivering newspapers. It was like, gangster rap was like a completely different thing. So then cut to, when people start digging into it, like intelligence agencies have had, there's a weird book on intelligence agencies and their role in rock and roll music in the 1960s. The book about Laurel Canyon. What is it? Strange Things.
I'm not sure if he's just buying it.
Very. I don't know if I buy it. Eddie Bravo's all. I don't know if I buy it, but there's a lot of weird connections to the intelligence community and music, particularly hip hop and particularly gangster rap. And if you want to get really dark, you would say if you want to fill your private prisons up, what better way than have very popular music encouraging encouraging crime, encouraging outright celebrating crime and violence. That way you fill your prisons up and you also keep people scared so you can give them more laws and more rules and crack down and make them easier to placate, easier to get them to fall in line and do what you need them to do.
Yeah, and support massive police buildups and massive, like militarization of the police and all this stuff. And I don't know, I've heard a little bit about that. I really don't know. I know Ice Cube has talked about it before, talked about how there's undeniably this influence. There are things about it that seem crazy, but I do know that, and I don't even think this is a controversial thing to say, I think this is just fact at this point, that it was the Reagan administration who did traffic in cocaine to the United States of America while they were ramping up the war on drugs. So they're bringing
100%.
in their effort to help the Contras or whatever, they're going okay, well, these guys are drug dealers, so if we move these drugs in, we can get these money shipments to them. And then you're sitting in their
reminder on the rules that hopefully you play by them.
epidemic to explode, and then they catch one guy with a few rocks on him, and they're throwing him in jail for decades. It's just that alone, just that one piece of information, you'd almost, if you're in a sane world, you'd go oh, so the people had a revolution and overthrew that government and publicly found more politicians involved, and then we started all this anew, and you're
just say
no, they lionized that guy. But still, for decades afterwards, the Republicans at the RNC bring up Reagan, and they go, hero, Ronald Reagan. The fact that isn't enough to go, well, this guy should be remembered as a monster.
Do you think they tell Reagan that they're selling crap in the hood? I don't think they do. I do not think the intelligence agencies let that information that far up the chain to a guy who's only in there for 4 years before he's supposed to be elected.
Fair enough.
Not a chance.
But George H.W. Bush definitely knew.
For sure. He fucking signed the docket.
That guy was all over that.
He was
He was their guy. He was the head of the CIA. So, but again, also, we get to a certain point when you're president, and this applies to Donald Trump in a lot of ways too, where it's your responsibility. If you didn't know, then that's your responsibility for not knowing.
I don't think you have an access. I do not. I do not think in cases like that you have access. I think if you're doing something like selling crack in the hood and using the money to fund the Contras, there's no fucking way you could ever kosherize that. think you ever let the president know. I think this is all black funded. I think there's layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy before you can get to any real data and information. If you want to talk about people that are doing operations in Nicaragua, you've got things going on in Iran, you've got to pay attention to Russia, this is happening here, that's happening there. There's not a fucking chance he knows they're selling crack. Hey, I just don't think you might tell him.
Look, you might be right about
Because
that.
why would they assume that he'd go along with it?
Or
Like,
tell him,
this is not a normal thing to do. I came into this office thinking I'm an actor.
Yeah.
I'm Ronald Reagan. I came into this office thinking I'm going to be a good American and we're going to get back to basics and hard work and trickle down economics. And you're telling me you're selling crack? Hey, fuck you, you're going to jail. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
Because he can't. That's how Nixon got caught. So Nixon didn't organize
That's right.
Watergate. He tried to cover it up.
Yep.
That's how he got caught. And they would do the same thing with Reagan.
yeah, well, it's...
You want to come clean about all the crack selling? Do
Well,
you really?
Right. Well, they could present it to them after it's a fait accompli and then be like, so what do you want to do now? Which is what happened with Nixon, right? So it's like,
Right.
look, this is going to look really, really bad. Good luck explaining this.
Right.
So he helps them cover it up, and then you go, now we got you.
We got you.
Now you might as well have been in on planning it because you helped us cover it up.
And the whole thing was set up by the government. That's
Yeah.
what's really crazy is intelligence agencies set up Watergate. They operated it. Bob Woodward was an intelligence agent before he was ever a reporter. That was his first gig. Tucker Carlson told me that. It
Yeah.
blew my fucking mind. He's like, what rookie reporter for their first gig, their first story, gets, you're going to take down the most popular president in U.S. history?
Yeah.
He had won by the biggest margin.
49 states.
Yeah.
He's a dominant real. The American people had spoken. They supported this guy. And then Bob Woodward, some 20-something-year-old reporter, he gets the biggest story in American history. He happened to just come out of naval intelligence in a weird coincidence.
Did I tell you what Bill Murray did? So Bill Murray was Bob Woodward movie.
Yes,
He wrote. What was it?
So
What was it
both
called?
guys landing it well here. Good action.
The one about Belushi.
Thank you.
It was off of Wire. Okay, it was just about Belushi being fucking crazy drug out. He goes, that's not my friend. He goes, that's not how he was. He was like, that was kind of an act. He was a little bit of a lightweight. Like if he had like 2-3 drinks, he was drunk. Like he goes, I think he did that speedball. I think this is the first time he ever did it. It's not that he never done drugs before, but he wasn't this guy. So this is all fiction. So he read the first 5 pages and goes, oh my God, they framed him. Isn't that crazy?
I know.
It's like this guy wrote about my friend in such a distorted, untruthful way. Now I have to think about what he discovered with Nixon.
Yeah.
Now I know what kind of person he is.
Yeah, my good friend, Scott Wharton, who is the best foreign policy voice in the United States of America. He wrote the best book on the terror wars called Enough Already, and the best book on the war in Ukraine called Provoked. But so Bob Woodward's latest book came out, and I remember he told me about this, but so he just happened to be writing his book on Ukraine when he saw this new Bob Woodward book came out, and they had a quote in it, I believe it was a Sergei Lavrov quote, it was like Putin's, right hand man, and Scott said he's reading it, and he goes, this quote's all wrong. He goes, the actual book, he was just researching this for his book, and he goes, the quote means the exact opposite of what he's claiming it means here. Like, see how he left out this part? He wasn't referring to this, he was referring to that. And then I remember he just told me, he goes like, so for the record, like, you can just never trust anything Bob Woodward says, because he'll take this quote and just get it, mangle it to the point where he's presenting it as if it means 180 degrees opposite of what the quote actually meant. And so, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that. And then that guy is like the historian of record.
Would you ever imagine that? When all the years when I was growing up, that guy was like a hero.
Mm-hmm.
He was like a journalistic hero.
Well, and he's how we know. He's how you know that in that moment, Dick Cheney turned to George W. Bush and said, Mr. President, I think we need to... And then you're like, oh, but he just makes shit up.
God. Like, when I was a kid, they made a movie about him. All the President's Men.
Mm-hmm.
It's a movie. Who plays Bob Woodward? What movie star plays Bob Woodward? Which one of them? Was it Robert Redford or was it the other guy? Who else was in that movie with him? Who played Bernstein? Dustin Hoffman.
That's right.
That's right. Robert Redford. Yeah. So imagine that. You're Bob Woodward. You bullshit everybody, and then you get to watch
But also just think about how much they could get. I remember, I don't know, I was in school, and I remember hearing like my history teacher talking to another teacher, and this was when Bill Clinton was getting in trouble for Monica Lewinsky. So I was like in middle school or whatever, and I remember hearing them talk. And one of them said to the other, he goes, so what do you think about the impeachment or something? And I remember my history teacher, who I thought was a pretty smart guy, but he goes, you know, they're treating him like he's Nixon, but he's not Nixon. And essentially what that meant, like what he was saying was like, well, Nixon was the most corrupt president who ever lived. Bill Clinton just got caught cheating on his wife. Like, that's not as big a deal as being the most corrupt. But they just made that like the thing that everybody knows. Like, we did have this one corrupt president, but the system works. That's the lesson. The system works, and it got there
before the internet. I think it's like very hard to make that same system work the same way now.
No, I completely agree. I mean to say that the narrative that everybody accepted was but the system works. Like, it figured out that he was corrupt. They had him step down. They got him out of there. When really the answer was much more like the intelligence agencies took over the United States of America in a hostile coup against John F. Kennedy, and then Nixon comes in like a few years later and is like essentially taken over as well, but they get the American people to believe that like what that was a corrupt president being ousted.
This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. There is such a thing as having too many options to choose from, like when you're scrolling on the TV trying to find something to watch, or have you been to one of those ice cream shops where they have hundreds of different options to choose from? It's overwhelming. The same thing can happen when you're hiring and you get inundated with applications. Well, it's time to stop stressing and use ZipRecruiter instead. Their innovative resume database can help you find and connect with the best people for your role. Try it for free now at ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. What makes ZipRecruiter's resume database so special is the advanced filtering feature. You can use it to hone in on exactly what you're looking for from the hundreds of thousands of resumes that are uploaded monthly to the site. And when you find a potential candidate, you can unlock their contact info instantly. Skip the candidate overload. Streamline your hiring with ZipRecruiter. See why 4 out of 5 employers go to ZipRecruiter, get a quality candidate within the first day. Just go to this exclusive web address, ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan. Again, right now, try it for free. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/Rogan.
Knee to the body. Back and forth action here in round one. Oh, big left. Oh, nice right hand. Oh, what a way to end the round. He got stunned by a huge shot there just before you heard the horn, so he gets saved by the bell.
ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to beat the fuck out of Muhammad Ali. And everybody was sad, and everybody hated him because of that. And you're never, like, if you're Nixon, and you're following JFK who got shot in the fucking head, we've lost, we got assassinated, someone assassinated the greatest president of all time, this good-looking guy who was going to really change things and didn't believe in secrecy and was talking to the American people like we have hope and dreams. He wants to put us on the moon, and he got shot in the head. Now we got this ugly fuck.
Well, there was LBJ in between there, at least. But yes, no,
I mean,
little bit. Well, I think also in hindsight, he wasn't that good looking. He also came off as kind of
well, I was going to say he's
figure.
Also very authoritarian.
Yeah,
you know, which is unfortunately when you have a society where you do have ubiquitous crime, you do need some kind of an authoritarian leadership. Not saying you need tyranny, not saying you need a dictator, but you need fucking laws, and you need rule of law. And sometimes those people come off very harsh and very uncaring and unloving, and, you know, the total opposite for, like, the reason why people voted for Jimmy Carter, I think. Because Jimmy Carter represented, like a genuinely sweet, good guy.
Right.
But, like, look how that presidency was a disaster, because they were all working against him, for sure. And on top of that, it's like hard to, like, you gotta be a bit of a hard ass if you want to run the world. But the way Nixon did it, we're still suffering through that today. That motherfucker, he's partially responsible for that sweeping Schedule I Act of 1970. When they did that and they made everything illegal, everything Schedule I, including things that are 100% medicinal, like marijuana, all that fucked up society, and they did it specifically to target the anti-war movement and to target the civil rights movement. Specifically. So it's not like Nixon was the best.
Oh, no. Oh,
what he did was fucking horrible.
Nixon had a lot of policy failures, and I would put the number one, and I completely agree with you. I mean, launching the war on drugs was a disaster, but taking us off the gold standard was one of the worst policy decisions in the history of the United States of America. And that is, we're so many of the problems we face now is because of that. And people could say, like, I've heard Pat Buchanan defend Nixon on this before. Pat Buchanan was in the Nixon administration. He was a speechwriter for him. And he was like, well, look, what were we going to do at that point? And so he was basically saying, because what happened was essentially, so you had like the Bretton Woods Agreement, which started after World War II. Or actually, I'm sorry, it started at the very end of World War II, in 1944. But they had the Bretton Woods Agreement, where they could kind of see where World War II was going. And it was basically like, okay, well, all of Europe is destroyed. And a lot of Asia is destroyed. Not yet, I guess it was 44, but it was getting there. And America had, at least the homeland hadn't really been touched. And we had like wild amounts of world gold. And so the deal was essentially that like we'll peg the dollar to gold at $35 an ounce. Everyone else can peg their currency to the dollar, and then the dollars are refundable. You can get an ounce for $35. And so that, was whatever. There were problems with the Bretton Woods Agreement, but that was what stood from after World War II into, so from 1944 to 1973, or 1971.
Yeah, to footwork leads to the jab.
And so essentially what happened was through the 60s, we started cheating. And it became very obvious to the world that we're like, in the 1960s, you have the Great Society, that we created Medicare and Medicaid, and we went to the moon, and we were fighting the war in Vietnam, and we were just printing money for all of this, which we still do to this day. But so essentially the Europeans started looking at us, and they were like, I don't think you got enough gold to cover all these dollars that you're printing around.
What's that thing with your audit of courthouse that we never heard about?
Well, what I know is that I'm pretty sure it was the French. I think it was the British too. It was definitely the French. The French basically called our bluff, and they just went, okay, we'll take gold. We got all these dollars. We'll take gold. We get an ounce for every $35 that we have, and we have quite a lot. And that's when Nixon went, no. No. He just basically defaulted in front of the entire world, and he said he's temporarily suspending the convertibility of dollars into gold. And they framed it as like, the French are attacking the stability of the dollar. Really, all they were doing was calling us on our agreement. We owed it to them.
We're like, we got so much gold, bro.
So Pat Buchanan says, defending the boy, Richard Nixon, he goes, well, what are we going to do at that point? Let him clean us out of all of our gold and just not be the dominant power? But I think the retort to that is, yeah, but that's what you should have done. Because the decision to go off of the gold standard essentially just said, well, now there's no more even pretend limits on government. Well, this is why Ron Paul, happy birthday, we raised him, just turned 90. And I was just at his, and
you were partying with Ron Paul?
Dude, that dude throws it down. No, I'm just kidding. It was very nice though to see him. Tulsi Gabbard was there, which was cool. But so essentially, right, that was the last restraint on government, is that at least, even then, even under Bretton Woods when we're cheating, at least there's some feeling of like, well, don't cheat too bad, because they could maybe try to,
count the gold.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But after that, it was off to the races. And this is why Ron Paul ran for Congress, is when Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, and then he was like, this is going to lead to big government. This is going to be the era of big government. So he was going to run to try to stop that. And he was completely right. This is what has really destroyed everything, is that there's just no, and it's a big part of the reason why I'm so angry about all these wars too, because it's all related. The Federal Reserve was created in 1913. or the Federal Reserve Act was signed into law by Woodrow Wilson in 1913. And then in 1914, I think is when it actually got up and running. And in 1914 is when the income tax was passed, also signed into law by Woodrow Wilson. 3 years later is World War I. You know? Like 3 years, or American entry into World War I. So it's like, this is the banking system and the tax system are very like interrelated with the warfare state. Like you need this stuff in order to fight wars. And, you know, even just over the, whatever, over the last 25 years, we've spent close to $10 trillion on wars, you know? And they didn't tax the American people for that. They know they couldn't tax us enough to pay. We would put an end to it. If they tried to raise everybody's taxes enough to come up with $10 trillion, and we wanted to fight regime change wars all over the Middle East, the American people would have been like, we're not doing that. But they didn't do that. They kept taxes where they were. I think they even cut some rates during those years, top rates. And then they borrowed the rest, and they still couldn't borrow enough, so they just print the money. And then essentially what happens is that the price of everything just goes up and up and up. And you just put more money into the system, and then people start looking around and going like, geez, why is the price of housing and healthcare and energy and childcare totally unaffordable? And the answer is because you're paying for the war in Iraq. And nobody thinks about it like that. But that's really what's going on. They can't, so for all the young people who are coming out of college now, and they're like, I'm 150 grand in debt. I have a gender studies major degree or whatever, you know, maybe something better than that, but they got an English degree or something, and they're working at DoorDash, and the average house is going for 600 grand, and they're like, what am I possibly going to do? It's like the reason why these kids are all demanding socialism, at least on the left, is because, like, what else are you going to do? Like, how do you, but the reason why that is the case is because your government decided to spend trillions of dollars on blowing up brown countries, and in some cases then rebuilding them to blow them up again. I mean, this is the actual cost of the thing. And I feel like it's almost nobody outside of like the Ron Paul libertarians, the Austrian economics guys, almost nobody else ever makes this connection. That it's like, this is the deal. You can't be a world empire without having a central bank that can print money for you, because otherwise it just doesn't work. Resources are finite, and you'll run out of them. And so you can't do that without having this monetary system. But the cost of this monetary system is that prices always go up and up and up and up, and that rigs the entire economy against the working class and the middle class in favor of the rich. It's just the way it is. When the value of assets is going up and up and up and up, that's great if you own stuff. That's great if you own stuff and you're selling it. If you got $1 billion in the bank, inflation is your best friend. But if you're on fixed income, you're a working class person, it just destroys it. And everybody who's working class knows this just from living through the last 5 years. But, you know, your grocery prices go up 30%. That is, you know, that's, you know, people have this idea that there's like economic issues over here, and then there's like social issues over here, there's foreign policy over here. It's all one thing. You know, the prices of groceries go up by 30%, families get destroyed, men swallow pistols, kids grow up without fathers. That's the cost of this shit. And that's what we're living through now. And what we'll continue to live through as long as we have a government that it spends way beyond our means. Like Dr. Ron Paul used to say, when you spend beyond your means, you're destined to live beneath your means.
Real quick leg.
Every era.
So he's really starting to put together some significant body shots here. These are going to take their toll as this fight goes on. Overhand lands flush. Man, he's so deceptive as he lands these leg kicks. Oh, you can hear the crowd as yet another calf kick lands. He's pretty swollen now.
Well, he's at a point now where even if he checks it, it still is very damaging. He waited too long to address that attack.
Lands a good series of kicks here.
This will be as an opening day every day.
Jones gets caught by the straight punch.
That was a nice combination there.
Thunderous
And we
leg kick
have
bounces
a
opponent
that's
a
built
little bit,
around
trying to
doing
stay
the exact
upright.
same thing to
Man,
John.
that changed the complexion of this fight.
Johnny,
like, just in shuttering USA, like, think about the amount of money, whether you agree with USA or not, the amount of money that was being pumped through that system, like, to all sorts of weird stuff, right? There's when the Department of Energy gave out $93 billion in loans in the months between Biden losing, or Kamala losing rather, and Trump taking office. Like, where's that? There's so many of these instances of insane amounts of money just being allocated while we're $39 trillion in debt. It's so unmanageable, and yet it just keeps marching on, and people are upset if you try to pull a Band-Aid off. Like, the idea of shuttering some of these government organizations.
All right, so a good series of kicks by him there. He has mixed it up beautifully, I think, on the feet tonight.
Fucking sure? Are you sure that this isn't a giant money-sucking scam that's been going on that does some good?
Yeah, well,
that's most of it, right?
Yeah, well, like, if you go, hey, I think, which, by the way, no one in Congress, I mean, short of, like, Thomas Massey, maybe Rand Paul, but, like, no one else in Congress is even, like, suggesting an idea so radical. But if I were to throw out a radical idea that we should go back to pre-pandemic level spending, so go all the way back to the crazy year of 2019, when it was anarchy or whatever. They'll all tell you the world's gonna end if we do that. Yeah. And even when they're making up these absolutely ridiculous, claims about how many people are gonna die if you cut government spending, it's so totally absurd. But then they never seem to go like, well, how many people are gonna die if I keep letting DC have all these war-making powers? How many people are gonna die if the president is able to fund a proxy war whenever he wants to? I mean, look at this shit, dude. I took so much.
All right, here we go, third and final round.
But I took a lot of heat for the stuff I said on the show here a few years ago about the war in Ukraine. Look at it now, dude. Look at and I don't think they're about to end the thing. I think they're, we could talk about, but I think they're putting poison pills in these negotiations already. That's what it looks like to me. But literally, the deal that I was talking about, whatever it was, 3 years ago, when I was saying on the show that they had a deal worked out, a peace deal worked out in the first few months of the war in 22, and Boris Johnson went and killed the peace deal on behalf of the West to make sure this war kept going. But the deal that was in pencil, not pen, that Boris Johnson killed, was essentially recognition of the annexation of Crimea. It was, at the time, it wasn't annexation of the Donbass region. It was like independence for the Donbass region. And then the agreement that the rest of Ukraine would not join NATO. That was the deal that they had worked out. And look at where we are now. Now, the deal that they're even talking about, even as Donald Trump goes, there's going to be some land swaps and all this. Okay, well, what's he talking? The deal right now, that is the best case scenario, that we're hoping to get, is that Vladimir Putin obviously keeps Crimea, keeps the entire Donbass region, gets a corridor from the south into Crimea, and the rest of Ukraine doesn't join NATO. So we have the same deal, just a little bit more in the Russians' favor, 3 years later, with hundreds of thousands of people having died in that process, just to get back to not as good a deal as they had in 22. And so,
the body yet again, just as he did in the previous
they'll keep going, which I think it's probably going to.
Chalk this up to an incredible night at the office. He's losing the fight. His cardio
they have
is
been for
essentially
like a full year, at least. Throwing people up there. And the thing that's really changed, the reason why, the Europeans and Zelensky, and they're at least pretending to come to the negotiation table right now, which they don't say, but this is the truth, is that support for the war amongst Ukrainians has collapsed. I mean, not like gone down by a few points. It's collapsed. There was just a piece on this the other day. It was Gallup, I believe. They said they had their latest poll. Super majorities of Ukrainian people, 70% around, want an immediate end to the war with negotiations on Venezuela. Let's settle it however we got to settle it. I remember for the first 2 years of the thing, everybody who I argued with about the war in Ukraine, their talking point would always be, the Ukrainian people want to fight. And who are you, Dave, to tell them that they don't have a right to defend themselves? And then I would respond by saying, yes, it's true the Ukrainian people want to fight, but, might that have something to do with the blank check that they've received from the world and the backup of the entire world? It's a different proposition to go, do you want to fight if John Jones is at your back and goes, I got your back, dude, let's go fuck these guys up. You're like, hell yeah, I want to fight. And then John Jones leaves, I might be like, but now the Ukrainian people don't want to fight. And by the way, I never believed any of that because I don't, I have my own libertarian views on things. And I'm like, if you're telling me the people want to fight, like, well, why do you got to conscript an army then? You know, like if they want to fight so bad, why you got to put a gun to their head and force them to the front line? Like you could, you could just make it a voluntary force, and then we'll find out real quick who wants to fight. But the point is now that even the Ukrainians don't want to fight over this stuff. There's just no justification for it. So now they move to phase B, which is essentially to pretend like they're negotiating, but putting all types of poison pills in the deal so that you know the other side won't take it. This is what they did with Iran too. This is why we got into that 12-day war, as they're calling it now. But, you know, it's like you put things into I was just reading the other day, it was on Axios. There was reports that Zelensky and the Europeans are like open to land swaps as long as there's, in their words in the Axios piece, Article 5-like security guarantees. So in other words, the rest of Ukraine's in NATO, which is the thing that caused the whole conflict to begin with. So, like, yeah, and, you know...
That's what that means, Article 5?
Article 5 is the article in NATO, in the NATO agreement, that says that, like, it says that, like, if one of the countries is attacked, like, all the countries have to join together to help. It doesn't exactly say you got to go to war over it, but it's like you have to help in the effort if they're attacked. So essentially, that's what they're trying to ask now, which is, but if you think about it, right, it's designed to incentivize Putin to keep the war going. Because if you're telling Vladimir Putin, let's just say, which it's not exactly clear that he would even take the deal that I just laid out before, but it was, I know that it's been reported that it was being signaled that he might be open to that deal. I get the Donbass region, you know, he's got still, like the Donbass region is Donetsk and Luhansk, and in Luhansk, I think, as of right now, I think the Russians control like 75% of it. They got all of Donetsk, they got most of Luhansk, but there's still Ukrainians controlling part of it, and then he's controlling part of these territories in the south. So this is what Trump means when he says the land swaps, meaning essentially you get out of the Donbass region, give me that, and I'll give you back. You know, the land swaps are Putin taking what he wants and leaving you the rest. But if you're going to tell Vladimir Putin, who fought this entire war over Ukrainian entry into NATO being his red line, basically in the middle of the war, as the war is potentially wrapping up, you're going to tell him, hey, whatever territory you don't take here will be a part of NATO. Well, what does that incentivize him to do? Take more of it then. Then why would you stop and give the rest of it up? And it does seem to me like that is clearly, at least from the Europeans, that is clearly the motivation of all of this, is to present something. It's you know, they do have their chess war moves, and so you present something that you know the other side can't agree to. And when they don't agree to it, you go, look, we tried to negotiate, and he just wouldn't take his head. So what can you do?
Jackson chains are pure.
Straight right, he misses.
I only wear Jackson. Shucks, this chain and more.
Back and forth we go. Well, DC kind of just playing with him at this point.
Is that people always want to pretend that there's one side that's good and one side that's bad.
Aspinall's nose
and
is
obviously
bleeding now. Looks to be cut perhaps there on the
started
bridge.
the war, started killing people in Ukraine.
Tagged there. Nice
but
combination to the head.
There's so many factors that are going on. And then there's also the long history of corruption that Ukraine's always had. And then there's also the weird deals that they're making with the Biden family, the control all the different, it was natural gas, and there's incredible supplies of rare earth minerals.
Right.
It's like really valuable territory. You know, there's this incentive to create some sort of, they were gonna try to, I think part of the plan was like, get off of Russian power and make Ukrainian power like central, and then whatever they were making over there, the amount of power, I forget what the number was, they said, but it's like trillions of dollars in natural gas, minerals, all these different things. We're supposed to pretend that that's not also a part of the motivation? Like, didn't even Trump say something about a deal that they were doing with Ukraine that involved?
Yeah, he got sucked into this talk about the rare earth minerals stuff, and it's Donald Trump. It's like his weakness, because there's a lot of great things about there's a lot of great things about coming from a business background. But then there's like the weakness of it is that he's always attracted by like, okay, Gaza could be beachfront property, and he's like, ooh, and you can just see him like come alive with these ideas. Yeah, it's always this stuff, but then the problem is that and look, I've been very harsh on Donald Trump over the last few months, but I think he deserves it. I think this administration is failing on so many levels, so profoundly, especially given the opportunity that they had. But, I heard him the other day. He called into a Fox News show, and he was like telling the story of the war in Ukraine, and it's like, it just seems like he's telling, like, it seems like you learned this on a TV show. Like, can we get some books in your diet? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, we really need someone here who's read a book about this, because he kind of had an idea of what he was talking about, but then he got it completely wrong. So he's trying to tell the story, and he's talking about the corruption of the Bidens in Ukraine, and you're like, okay, yes, that is true, but like, there's a whole story here that I don't think you're really understanding. Because he goes, look, this goes back to 2014. And so I'm watching this, and I got like so excited for him. Like I was like, yes, it does go back to 2014. Thank you, Donald Trump. And he goes, it goes back to 2014 when Putin took Crimea, and Obama let him have it. He just let him have it. Never would have happened on my watch, but Obama gave Putin Ukraine. And you're like, no, dude, that's not. Just go back 2 months earlier in that same year. The problem wasn't that Obama gave Putin Ukraine. The problem was that Obama took Ukraine away from Vladimir Putin. As I've played on your show, and you played with Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence has sat right here where I'm sitting and watched Gideon Rose explain to Stephen Colbert exactly what we're doing here. Russia, as Gideon Rose, the editor of Foreign Affairs magazine, said, Russia is Batman. Ukraine is Robin. We are stealing Robin away from Batman. That's what the Maidan Revolution was. That's why the USAID and the NED poured $100 million into the street protest, right? And so they overthrew the government, and then a bunch of the former Ukrainian prime ministers started floating out that we should tear up the Sevastopol lease in Crimea. Because, this is Russia's only year-long neighborhood. They've always had it. This was their agreement. They had like a 50-year lease or something like that. But after the West backed a coup that overthrew the government and put in a pro-Western government, they started talking big, like, well, maybe we'll tear up that lease. And so Vladimir Putin went, no, I'll just take it. And that was like, so anyway, so he goes back to that, doesn't go back a few months earlier, and then misses the entire point. That because like the point is that it's not just like, oh, I wish Donald Trump was under the same boat I'm into or something like that. The point is that when you don't get that piece of the chapter, then you miss what's happening right now. So when we're talking about like these, essentially what Donald Trump was saying, the way he was trying to sell it to Zelensky, was like, look, do this rare earth minerals deal with us. And this is kind of like a security guarantee. It's not exactly a security guarantee, but if we're in business with you, and then Putin's trying to fuck up our business, hey, he's picking a fight with us too. But the whole point is that that's exactly what caused this whole catastrophe. Vladimir Putin and the entire Russian elite have been crystal clear about this. That they go, look, we can tolerate a neutral Ukraine. We could tolerate NATO up to Ukraine. Ukraine is neutral, and then there's Russia. We cannot tolerate Ukraine being a part of America's military. That's a step too far. But every time we try to let them be neutral seems like it's never good enough, and that never actually works. So if you're going to come in here and say neutral's not good enough, they're going to be part of the West, then and we're going to say, actually, we'll take him as part of Russia instead. Now, he also believes, as he says all the time, which I don't think is weirdly American, but he also believes that, like, they're not really a real country, they're kind of historically ours anyway, and, you know, he's got his own views on that. But that's not what the war was about. And everybody, you know, and when I was here, which I was very excited to do, because I'm, you know, a weird romantic and you know, dash of autism or something like that. But where I was really excited to do today was, we were going to debate this issue. And I remember when he first goes, the war had nothing to do with Ukrainian entry into NATO. And I was like, okay, well, let me just give you 2 points real quick. Number one, the head of the CIA, because, you know, during all the years of Joe Biden, when he was the ambassador to Russia, he wrote the Net Means Yet memo. He literally said that this was all what it was all about, and that Russia didn't want to do this, but they would if we kept pushing Ukrainian entry into NATO, and we did keep pushing it. And then I said the other one was Stoltenberg, who is not anymore, but was the head of NATO while this was happening. And he said that Vladimir Putin sent them in writing a draft treaty that all you have to do is put in writing that you will never bring Ukraine into NATO and it won't invade. And then you grab it. We said no. And then he invaded. But so I said this to Douglas Murray, and I was kind of curious. Like, I was like, what's his response to this going to be? Like, what is he going to say back to me? Maybe he's got something I've never heard before that I'm going to have to be like, ooh, I can say that. And his response was, a libertarian quoting the CIA, I see. And you're like, wait, so that's you? If it is to honor a hypocrite somehow, which isn't even hypocrisy, but yes, I think the CIA should be abolished. I also think it's relevant when the head of the CIA admits what the war was all about. I don't see that.
Do you think the CIA totally should be abolished? Don't you think we should kind of pay attention to what the fuck is going on in the world? Giving a real-life perspective, not a utopian perspective, but a real-life perspective. There's terrorist groups all over the world plotting shit. Probably a good idea.
Yeah. So what the CIA was originally, like, conceived of, like essentially being a newspaper for the president, like being like, hey, we get all the real intelligence and we give it to you here.
Yeah.
Yes, I 100% think there's room for intelligence gathering. But what the CIA became is a paramilitary organization that starts wars and overthrows democratically elected governments all around the world.
And occasionally sells coke in the hood.
And occasionally, when they're bored, and maybe like on like a Tuesday, like a 3-day weekend, and then on Tuesday, maybe move some crack into Los Angeles. No, that, I mean, it's a disgrace to a professed free society. I mean, it's look, like, which we've also played on the show before, but when Chuck Schumer was on with Rachel Maddow, which is one of the most amazing moments in the history of, like, corporate media, because what's amazing about it, if you watch, like, the whole thing, is that Rachel Maddow's asking him questions, and he's giving his Chuck Schumer, you know, political answers to all of them, however you feel about it. It's like they have their spiel. But then she breaks from script, and she preemptively apologizes to him. She goes, hey, I'm sorry to just throw this on you right now. This is, it was in, I believe, January. It was either December 16th or January 17th. So Donald Trump has beat Hillary Clinton, but he's not president yet. He's president-elect. And so she goes, sorry to, you know, throw you off, put you on the spot, but Donald Trump just tweeted this. So she's reading a tweet that he just tweeted live on air to the Senate Majority Leader. So she reads the tweet with him, you know, trashing the CIA or something like that. And then Chuck Schumer just gives, like, his organic response. There was no script prepared for this. He wasn't planned on being asked this question. He just goes, look, here's Donald Trump talking about the CIA. And Chuck Schumer goes, he goes, I mean, Donald Trump, you want to go with the intelligence agencies? And his exact phrase was, they have 7 ways till Sunday to get back at you. Yeah. So and by the way, Rachel Maddow in this moment does not say, pause the tape. What did you just say? Like, the most powerful Democrat in the Senate just admitted we don't live in a democracy. Just admitted that this whole thing's an illusion. But the President of the United States is not the President of the United States. All our talk about democracy being on the ballot, democracy's been gone for a long time if it ever existed. You just straight up said that the duly elected commander-in-chief and chief executive of the United States of America ain't really the one who's in charge. Because you better not insult the CIA. Who worked for you, ostensibly. Or supposedly, I should say. You know? And so, like, that, they'll get you. Or they'll get you. Or they'll ruin you. And by the way, they did. Didn't they? And this is the stuff which is very interesting that Kelsey is releasing now, which I don't know whether, I'm kind of past the point of like, it's hard to take a lot of things about Donald Trump seriously to me at this point. Freaking on all types of, the Epstein stuff and just a lot of, kind of core things where like, so Donald Trump, at least according to him, they stole the election. I was thinking about this the other day. Because he was talking about, in the same thing that I'm talking about when he called into Fox News, he was talking about the Ukraine war. He said at one point, he goes, the war never would have happened if I was president, which Putin threw him a bone and backed him up on that the other day. I said the war wouldn't have happened if Trump was president. That doesn't. Just saying what, he's smart enough to know.
Nice thing to say. The guy likes being complimented.
And Putin's smart enough to know that, like, this is how you negotiate with Donald Trump. Yes. So that's kind of a silly point, but aside from that, so Donald Trump goes, he goes, it never would have happened if I was president. And then he takes it a step further than what he normally says, and he goes, it wouldn't have even happened if anyone else was president. If we had just had a regular president, this war never would have happened. It's only because Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of America, was president that's why this happened. But then I'm sitting there as I listen to that, and I go, you told me that they cheated. Like, you didn't really lose the election in 2020. That's just, you've stuck to that story now for many years. So you're saying they cheated. You're making a similar claim here. They overthrew democracy. They installed Joe Biden, and a war where hundreds of thousands, maybe well over 1 million people died, happened because they cheated the election.
Beautiful technique on the straight right hand. Well, he is at his kickboxing best tonight. Another nice, good series of kicks by him.
I mean, the kicks are coming in bunches. Normally it's the hands. Tonight he's going kick after kick after kick.
Well, just as...
He's got to try to finish here. Nice straight punch. Hurt again.
Okay, so I'm going to need to know who they is, and I'm going to need to know when we're going to see him purplex. Like, you're the president now. You got your own, but all of us on some level don't really think they're going to start arresting people over the stolen election of 2020. And,
I don't think they have any evidence.
Yeah, no, that's right. I completely agree. Now,
I think there's a lot of speculation, and there's a lot of consideration about mail-in ballots. There's a lot of shenanigans. There's a good record of shenanigans, and there's the reality of any kind of electronics can be hacked.
No, so I agree with all of that. I'm just saying, like, once you've made these statements and your administration was in, no, I remember. It was one of the most interesting parts of your podcast with him was, like, when you asked him about that, it was like, you really didn't have anything to back it up.
If that was you or if that was me, I mean, if there was some reason why I knew that they did something, and I could give you all the facts, I would have that ready for anybody. Because for 4 fucking years, they've been telling me he's crazy for questioning the election. Yeah. So after 4 years, I have a fucking tight 10 minutes. The election, where I could just rattle off at you and rock your world with it. Like, these are the facts, Jack.
Well, there's a big difference between, speculating and asking some questions and being like, I'm not sure I believe the official story of this. And there's a difference between then being, as a president of the United States, going, this is what happened. Like, this was, and if you're going to say that, then you got to give me your theory. Like, really lay it out here. Like, and he never had that part. But I will say, they kind of pivoted off the Epstein thing into Russiagate, which seemed to be, designed that there was this tremendous desire. The whole reason Donald Trump's political existence is
10 seconds to
go
in the round.
Is that people are furious about the swamp. They're furious about how corrupt our government is and the profound crimes that the government has committed against the American people, and they want justice for that. And so they pivoted off of Epstein after promising to deliver something on that, and then went, okay, well, how about Russiagate now? So now they're, but I will say, Tulsi Gabbard released a bunch of new documents, and there were some pretty interesting ones there. It wasn't like she just released new stuff where it's like, oh, we already knew all this. Like, there was new stuff in there that we didn't really already know. sent it to the Justice Department, and from what I understand, there is a grand jury being assembled or something like that. So I don't know.
Really
I
good with
still,
the kick to the body.
in the deepest part of my soul, that there's no way they're actually going to try to prosecute Obama and Brown and Clapper and Comey. But
The FBI raided John Bolton's house.
yes, I think that's unrelated. But that is an interesting story also.
Back at the
But it seems
replay,
like they're doing a
not
lot of
every
shit.
day you see a fight end due to a body
They
kick
did
like
that with
That was
Obama.
a massive body
What was
kick
the
stuck
actual
right under the
treason?
elbow.
Like,
Once it
what is
landed,
she
you knew
stating
the
is
fight was
treason?
about to
Well,
be finished.
so now I don't think she said treason. I don't think legally that's technically right. But
We'll get the
someone
official
might correct me
decision
on
with
that.
Bruce
Maybe it's
Buffer.
sedition or something. I
Ladies and
don't
gentlemen,
know. I mean, like, I think treason. I think John Brennan did commit treason when he armed Al Qaeda in Syria, and Obama as well, with the rest of Obama and John Kerry and Brennan. I think that's literally treason, right? Giving aid and comfort to the enemy in a time of war. What Obama and Comey and Clapper did to Donald Trump is they framed him for treason. So what do you call that exactly? Framing the sitting U.S. president? Now, I guess Obama can't be guilty of the sitting U.S. president, but he was guilty of the candidate and the president-elect. So, because he was out of there by the time Trump comes in. But what Tulsi Gabbard released that I thought was very interesting, which I'd never seen before, and we did, I don't remember it was last year or the year before, but there was one episode that me and you talked a lot about Russiagate and got like pretty deep into it.
Right.
But what Tulsi released, which I'd never seen before, was that there was a consensus amongst the intelligence agencies after the 2016 election. So this is Hillary Clinton's lost, but Barack Obama is still president and Donald Trump is the president-elect. And they had consensus that there was no meaningful interference in the election. And then there is this one meeting with Obama that she points to where this is where the consensus changes. And they had a new threat assessment written that actually we believe Russia interfered in the election. But it was total bullshit. They've never been able to back it up for shit. You know, they find minor little things here or there, but nothing that demonstrates that, like, the results of this were flipped. And then they ran with that for 3 years after it.
But there's not a record of that meeting, right?
She just released a bunch of documents with records of that meeting.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, the actual discussions. It's not on record.
Now, I think they have...
Do they have to do that?
No. She had a couple different documents there that were, like, had notes from the meeting. I think one had minutes of the meeting. But no, you're not listening to an audio tape of it. Like, we don't have, like, a Nixon, talking about the gays and the Jews or something like that.
I'm just trying to strongman or steelman it. I'm saying, like, would it be possible that Obama knew something that he could relay to them in the meeting?
Be an interesting thing to find. That'd be interesting for a court proceeding.
But even if that's the case, it still doesn't align with the known facts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is a problem.
Yeah. Well, it's not. Look, I think we'll see what comes of this. Which I'm not betting on anything coming of this. But there is something interesting. Look, there's a lot of things that happen after that. The real, to me, the true outrage of Russiagate is that they didn't stop after he won the presidency. It's still pretty outrageous to try to frame a candidate. It's still pretty outrageous for Hillary Clinton to have, like, opposition research and use an actual, Russian spy and a British spy to do it. But, that's campaign stuff. It's a little bit different. Like, once he becomes the commander-in-chief, then you have the FBI and the CIA still working to frame. And this is where, and for all of that stuff, Hillary Clinton's gone, Barack Obama's gone, Brennan is gone, Comey is still there for at least a few months, and then you have, like, Andrew McCabe and people like that who, in the 60 Minutes interview, and anybody can go look at it. He literally said that they debated at the Justice Department, and this is the highest levels of the Justice Department. It was Jeff Sessions would have been the Attorney General at the time, and he may have recused himself already by that time, so maybe not him. But then everybody else, like the top 2-3 guys at the Justice Department, all sat down and debated what to do, and they said they decided we're going to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove Donald Trump as president. And that basically they went around and realized they weren't going to be able to do that they weren't going to have enough people in his cabinet willing to turn on him to invoke the 25th Amendment. Which, the 25th Amendment is designed for for Joe Biden.
Right up
It's designed for, we still didn't use it, even though these last few years, which is crazy.
I mean,
Even after the debate, they go, we need a new candidate, but no one went, yeah, but this guy can't be commander-in-chief for the next 6 months. They just let him. But they said they were going to invoke the 25th Amendment. This is on 60 Minutes. Andrew McCabe says this himself. And that they realized they couldn't do that, and so they settled on a special prosecutor. Because they couldn't remove him, so this was their other attempt. They'll just bog him down. We'll investigate everything in his life. We'll find some crime somewhere. It's, to this day, a miracle that they didn't. I can't believe they didn't find any other dirt on Donald Trump. I always thought when Mueller started being the special prosecutor, I would, and you can listen to my podcast on record. If you want to go, part of the problem, available where podcasts are sold. You can listen back. I said at the time, I go, they're not going to find anything on Russiagate because there's nothing there. This is all made up. But they're going to find something. The guy's been a real estate developer in New York City for how many decades now? Every real estate developer has committed a few crimes. And they found nothing. They locked up, they charged a bunch of his people around him with tax crimes and other things that had nothing to do with Russiagate. Then they tried to put pressure on them to flip on him. That's how they do these things. None of them had anything on him. And so anyway, but the point is that it was the deep state attempting to remove the sitting president of the United States of America off of something that they knew was bullshit. You had people, Eric Swalwell was out on cable news saying, not only an asset, saying Donald Trump is a Russian agent. He's working for Vladimir Putin. He's his guy here. They all knew this was bullshit. I mean, it's like
online ad nauseum.
On CNN, on MSNBC, on ABC, CBS, every day. Trump-Russia collusion.
And many of those same people are still telling you what's true. Many of those same people are still in front of the camera telling you what's true.
Yeah, they're still. That's right. And they're the same ones up there going, we got to arm Ukraine till the end. We got to give Israel more bombs to drop on the Palestinians. This is even
how is MSNBC handling this Tulsi Gabbard revelation?
I think by changing their name to MSNBC, I'm supposed to forget.
So did NBC bail out? So
think
Microsoft and NBC are together in this joint venture with MSNBC.
Yeah, I think they, I don't know exactly what they're doing, but I saw it was announced the other day that they're changing it from MSNBC to MS Now.
Do they think it's toxic? They think
I guess so.
Toxic?
I guess. Yeah, they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. They fucked it up. They got rid of some people, though. But they kept the queen.
Rachel Maddow?
Yeah.
I think she's the only one who pulls in any type of numbers,
She's what she did during COVID was so preposterous.
Yeah.
Just that alone. There's so many times where she's, Matt Taibbi wrote a great book, Hate Inc., and he basically said Rachel Maddow is the left's Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, I think that's about fair.
Yeah.
And it's really...
It probably is not fair to Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly was pretty rough in his day. I mean, I don't know. I
don't know if he's as inaccurate. Like, that was horribly inaccurate.
It was bad.
The COVID stuff and then the Russia stuff. Like, is there a thing that you could point to that Bill O'Reilly pushed that was a hoax for all those years?
Iraq. I mean, they were so bad on Iraq, dude. Yeah. Bill O'Reilly and Sean Hannity and all those guys, I mean, they were just like, I mean, it just like as if it was a certainty every day. It was a certainty that he had nuclear weapons.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I don't know. You could debate what's worse. I mean,
No, that's worse.
Well, yes.
You think that's worse?
Well, yeah. I mean, 1 million people died. So there's a strong argument that that's worse than other things. But there is something about, look, first of all, there is something about framing the sitting U.S. president that truly is a crime against the Republic in a profound sense. But the other thing about Russiagate, which I think makes it, where you could maybe enter into the debate, and then COVID, you can argue with all these things. I suppose the war in Iraq, I don't know, really destroyed a lot of people's lives. But part of the reason why they framed Donald Trump. So in 2016, Donald Trump was explicitly running on. He talked about this at all the debates, and in the beautiful kind of childlike Trumpian way where he just has no filter, so he just says the thing that's in his mind, and then he often thinks he's like a genius. No one else has said this out loud, but it's not that they haven't thought of it, it's just that they're all corrupt. But he just said, because at the time the war in Syria was going on, and Donald Trump would just say, why are we in Russia on opposite sides?
And he lands another combination here,
Russia's trying to kill the
starting
terrorists.
to get into a
That's
strike.
who we're trying to kill. Because Obama and Brennan have been siding with the terrorists. They have been funding Al-Qaeda and ISIS in Syria to try to overthrow Bashar al-Assad. They have the plan break strategy, the 7 countries in 5 years. This was the next guy they were trying to overthrow. They ended up getting that regime changed earlier this year. So they were working on that, and then Trump just went, we should be friends with Putin. And we should work together on killing the terrorists. I don't care about overthrowing Assad.
All right, well, good news is he rocked him. Bad
I don't even know what you're talking about. Why would we want to
finish
overthrow
the
the
job,
secular
and now
dictator
his
in a
opponent's
three-piece
back in
suit
the
who
fight.
shaves his chin? Like, he was just like, this is stupid. I don't want to be a part of that. And he was running on, we should be friends with Russia. And this drove all of the Republicans crazy. Like, oh, man, we should be friends with Russia.
Just over 2 minutes to go in the round.
So part of the deal of framing him for being in a conspiracy with Vladimir Putin was that he couldn't be
this
friends
striker
with
knows
Russia
one direction,
anymore.
that is forward. He knows one style, that is aggressive,
in
and that's
2017
exactly what we've seen tonight.
and announced some new treaty with Vladimir Putin or some partnership or something like that, the entire media would have been like, see, that's proof. We've been telling you he's in with Vladimir Putin. When he went to Helsinki,
we'll see how he handles that adversity, but nothing ideal about
aside
it here
from
in the
this
middle
week,
of
I think that was the last time the two of them were face-to-face. Was in Finland in 2017. I could be wrong about that, but I think that was the last time the two of them were together.
Going to the new
and
strike
there was
now.
this big thing, I don't know if you remember this, but it was a big deal at the time.
Another powerful
that
kick
Donald
there.
Trump,
A
so
lot
they
of
asked him,
volume with the
what
feet.
the intelligence agencies are saying that Vladimir Putin will in the election. Did you ask him about that? And Trump goes, yeah, I asked him about that. And he told me he didn't interfere in the election. And I believe it. And then they made a huge thing about this. On foreign soil, Donald Trump says he believes Vladimir Putin over his own intelligence agency. What are the men and women who protect us every day? The men and women who frame the sitting president. And so,
the beginning of the end here.
So that's kind of the game right there. And then you had these like conflicts. In Ukraine, right? The Civil War was already going on. The Civil War started after 2014. This was like right in the middle of that Civil War. And so anyway, my point is just to compare it to Iraq.
He almost had him out.
Who knows how big of a deal was it to poison a U.S. president who wanted to have détente with Putin at that time? Like, maybe we could have avoided this whole thing, and that's the death toll. I don't know. I've seen different reporting on it, but it's close to Iraq. I mean, I think it's more military and less civilians, which does matter. But it's up there. Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, too. Yeah, that's right. So, look, it still changes the moral calculation a little bit. Someone puts on an awful and is holding a gun. It's a little bit different than a kid or something like that. But, the crime of killing the potential for a president to make peace with Putin, I mean, this is the thing that's so,
effective with the jab.
Infuriating about all of it. And something that really feels perfect. You're an expert. You're just a comedian. So leave this to the serious experts here. The thing is so frustrating and just profoundly reckless is that, look, like when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, and you can go back before that, but let's just take that as a point to start. It should have been obvious to any if there really was this class of experts, I would be so happy to turn this over to them. Let me go tell jokes at the mothership. That's what I'm supposed to do, not this. Fine. But the thing is, if there were serious, rational adults who had wisdom way beyond what some shit-talking comedian knows about, which there should be, then they would have recognized that, the most important priority in the history of the world is the relationship between D.C. and Moscow. There's never been anything more important than that. And that doesn't even matter whether you're a Russian or an American. You could, it doesn't matter if you live in Brazil or wherever. The most important thing in the history of the world is these two capitals that have 90% of the world's nuclear weapons between the two of them get along. Okay, this is the most important thing. This could end our species if they don't. So, let's make sure they do. And that seemed to have been the priority of almost no one in power. A few exceptions to that, but almost nobody went so again, my point is poisoning the relationship between a president who wants peace with Russia is on the level of launching a war in Iraq. I mean, it's like, it's that bad of a thing to do. Now, hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but it's a profoundly reckless thing to do.
Yeah, it's up there.
Yeah.
It's,
All right, so this highly anticipated stand-up-only event is now underway.
it's
Friendly
so
reminder
tender.
on the rules, and hopefully you play
One
by
of the
them.
things about
No
politics,
grappling
I
of
think
any
for
type.
most
So
of
if
it's
you
so
like
frustrating
you
you don't say like, oh, if we just do this, that, and this,
He doesn't know
you
you
know,
can
and
stop
people say
him.
things like, oh, we
Knock
just
him
need to
out.
take money out of politics.
Serve him up. Go get it. Knock him out. The fight's done.
Yeah.
How you can do that?
Well, I don't.
That's crazy. You should just make all people honest. How about
Yeah,
that?
right,
That might
right.
be easier.
Well, there's also
There's easier.
you know, that's like it's a
All right, so
it's
he's landed a
a
few
talking
seminal
point. I don't even
uppercuts
think
already, DC.
like I'm not.
You gotta think
It's
he
an
goes
understandable
certain
point.
it's
Yes,
correct.
it's a nice
Try to
idea.
find another
I
one.
think the issue,
But
like this is what I've always
expect him
seen,
to
like the
really
issue
sit
with
down
kind of
and
take
try to
money out
make
of
one
politics
really
angle,
count
and why I
and
think
try to
the
end this fight.
better
What a
approach is to take politics out of
They're
money.
at it here.
Like I think,
Shots landing
and I'm not saying either is easy to do, but the issue that you have, and I know that there's a lot of like people I really love really say that all the time.
We
They're
told
like, you
you
got
off
to
the
take
top that he had a
money out
reach
of politics.
advantage,
And
and he
I would
really
certainly
is using
support,
it.
like,
Nice
if
punch
there
there.
was, I think Rand Paul had a proposal
Great commitment to the kick
a few
game.
years ago where it was like, if you make any money from
no
a government
denying that he bucked him,
contract,
but couldn't
you
quite
should
get the
not
finish.
be allowed
He
to
hurt him real
work
bad.
in that sector for 20 years after you made there. So, right, like, there's something like you shouldn't
I
be
have
able
no
to
idea. This
be a
fight is
defense
supposed to be
contractor
over.
and then,
It might
you
not
know what
be
I mean,
over
go
now.
into,
It's gotta be
yes,
over very soon.
so anything like that probably is a good idea if you can get it passed. Good luck getting it passed.
Here to share
Nice punch by
my
Hooker.
journey with
Oh,
hair
another
growth and
stiff
hair
jab
loss,
here. That's about as
particularly
good as
in
it
the
gets with that
section
weapon.
here. My own birthmark from the birth of my son. I've been using
Able to check
salons,
the high kick.
really wonderful
You know,
program
that's a big
products,
thing whenever
the
you're blocking
hair
high
regrowth
kicks. You
treatment,
cannot just
the
take the brunt of
biotin
that kick
hair
on one
gummies,
arm. You have to
and
get that
these two
cross one to try
amazing
and guide
serums.
that
One
kick
is a
so you don't
densifying
take all of it.
scalp serum. The other one
All right,
is
so
a
unless
soothing
my eyes are
scalp
deceiving me,
serum.
that is
Can't
some
recommend
bruising now on that
programs
calf.
enough.
It only takes one, John. I mean,
Consistency and function.
Oh, he gets back up. The question is for how long?
I'm Macaulay Culkin, and today I'm going to introduce you to my favorite fighter, Royal Kingdom. You see, Royal Kingdom has... And the best part? It's free. So download Royal Kingdom today and start the new year off right. Still got it.
Like that's, but the issue really comes like the major problem is that Washington D.C. is the most powerful, organization in the history of the world. That they spend $7 trillion a year. I mean, that is so much power. Like it's hard to quantify. It's literally like you think about it in your mind, right? Like you think about like how much money Elon Musk has. And then just to think that 1 year of federal spending is like squishing him like an ant. Like it's nothing, dude. Like the money Elon Musk has is nothing compared to $7 trillion, That's just 1 year what they spend in Washington, D.C. And when you have that much concentrated power, the idea of saying, well, we're going to write a rule that says nobody's allowed to try to manipulate that power. It's like, okay. And then, look, there are rules. There's all types of rules.
It's a funny way to put it because it's like so undeniable.
Well, look, there are rules that say that like foreigners aren't allowed to contribute to political campaigns, and like there's different regulations on all of them. But like Saudi Arabia is not allowed to give Hillary Clinton's campaign $10 million. They could give the Clinton Foundation $10 million. You know what I mean? So, like, you write these rules, they find another way to do it. By the way, all that money, the Clinton Foundation was making so much money until right around 2016. Everyone stopped donating to it. It's just so weird. Like, the Saudis were really into charity, until right around that. So, the point is that you can't, the only thing, like it's not the lesson of the Lord of the Rings wasn't like, we really need some common sense regulations about how you use this ring, right? Like, the lesson is that you have to destroy this thing. And that's tough. I'm not saying that's easy. I don't know who our Frodo is, but the point is that this power has, so this is fundamentally, I think, why I think the Ron Paul libertarians have it right, and while I really do respect some other left-wingers, I think they have it wrong when they go like, no, we need the government to be working for us rather than working for them. It's like, that is unrealistic. It's unrealistic enough that we'll just be able to cut, but the answer is that there should be way less power in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's the whole, that's George Washington's constitutional republic that we're supposed to be living in. Is the idea is that there's like, oh, Washington, D.C. has very little power, the states have a lot of power, the people have a lot of power. It's not all concentrated in one capital, because then you get what we have.
How in the world are
Once
these
it's
two women
fully
still
secured,
standing?
like it is
Way to
now,
hide that
just
leg kick.
deeply ingrained. You know, the tentacles of this
Well, she
octopus
keeps
go
going
so
back to
deep.
that right hand. This
There's
one's
so
not
much
there
money.
for her. So both
And there's
girls
so many
landing
people
right
that
out
are
of
in
the
a
chute.
position of power. It's like,
Oh, big left.
it's very
Beautiful
hard to
combination.
change rules now. I think the best hope that we have
Oh, an instinctive land there as
is-
she goes to the
it's
jab,
gonna
DC.
sound
Nicely done.
ridiculously
That
romantic,
jab
but
is stopping her in her
I think
tracks.
there's
She's not
people
only
that
a
are
range
growing up
finder,
now
she
that
is
have a
really
better
damaging her
understanding of
opponent
how
behind the
things
jab.
work than ever before.
So just over 20
You know,
total strikes.
this guy
Already
Michael
landed
was
for
on
Amanda
the
Nunes.
days of historians
Digs right into the body, and she is clearly hurt, DC.
and
She's
we were
hurt
talking
very
about
bad.
how
I don't know if she's going to be able
science
to
changes one funeral at a time. You know, I think politics probably changes one funeral at a time too. And the way,
Oh, nice elbow.
you know, like, I don't agree with this Mondani guy, the guy in New York
Great
City,
defense.
but
That
I also
punch
don't
had no
agree
chance.
that there should be this massive coordinated campaign from both sides
Well,
to make
she's
sure
got a
that
pretty
he
high
doesn't
fight
get into
IQ,
power.
but tonight it seems
Because
to
you don't
be
agree with
all
it.
about
Like, I think
aggression.
a
She
lot
is
of the
swinging
stuff
for
he's
the
saying is
fences.
ridiculous.
All that stuff
Like
left
using
blocked. In
New
and
York
out
City
the box.
funds
Fair
to
enough.
pay for transgender surgeries for people who can't afford them. Like,
Shots going on right here.
I'm a nay on that.
yeah, but it just sounds nuts. It sounds like you're only going for that nutty vote. Like, you want that nutty vote. What is this? Are we allowed to disagree? So I disagree. I don't support that. I don't support a lot of the stuff he's saying. The raising of taxes, I think, is going to be really problematic. But I'm not an economist.
Are you someone who
Beautiful
loves
job
other
getting those hands up.
but you do not like being held
Both
with
fighters
her?
throwing heat now.
So let me tell you
Oh
about
my
the
God.
She's in a world of trouble now. Big elbow there.
absolutely as
Liz.
magical as it sounds.
Oh,
It is
beautiful
really
hook move there.
super lightweight. So if you
Huge right hand.
This is a great fight.
Well, pretty good recovery by her opponent after being shot. But we see this all the time, right? If you don't close the deal when you have that opportunity, opponents back in the fight can
Kevin
potentially
just turned
Especially with this opponent. This opponent's so dangerous.
huge liver kick. That might do it.
Oh, she hurt her.
But what does this game look like? Is it the people get to vote? Because the people voted, and they voted, and he won the primary. So it's supposed to be the Democrats get behind him, and then it's Democrats versus their public. Or are we doing something different?
No, yes, the people get to vote, but if they vote wrong,
All right, here we go with
Hamilton
round
might have to come in and let the people know
All right,
that
next
they
round is
have
underway
erred
here after
and
one of the better
you know,
5-minute
it's a unique
sequences
time
in recent
to
UFC
see a power
history.
struggle.
Crazy action in that previous round.
he's so, and I should, I guess, preface myself. First of all, I find this race to be fascinating. It's
That
a
opened up a cut
microcosm
around her
of where
eye
we're at
area. That will
politically
shore
in
up the
so many
defense.
different ways.
She's gotta
And
move her head. She has not
I
moved
should
her head
preface
enough.
myself, I am the most free market capitalist libertarian. I don't believe in socialism at all. Most libertarians are communists compared to me. Like, I believe in less, whatever government you believe in, I believe in less than that. So I do not agree with Mondani's, any of his economic policies. There is something, though, that you just can't deny, where it's like, okay, look, first of all, you got this young guy who's kind of the anti-establishment candidate. He's
Immigrant.
He's an immigrant. He's a newcomer to politics, a newcomer to being a citizen of the country, however you feel about that. His campaign was laser focused on one issue, which was the unaffordability of New York City, which if anybody at all is familiar with New York City, that is the issue of New York City. It's the issue for 99% of the people who live in New York City. The top 1% of New York City are doing great, but everybody else is just struggling to get by. You know, you're either rich or you're struggling in New York City. And the prices have gone up dramatically in the last few years. So he just ran his whole campaign laser focused on that. Then the establishment comes in and they run Andrew Cuomo, the disgraced former governor who murdered old people in nursing homes, who got, had a Me Too thing, which I don't know how legit that was, but got driven out in disgrace. Governor Lockdown, representing the failure that just wrecked this city, is who. And then what did they try to hit him on? It was Israel. They thought that was his weakness. It was, dude, that debate was the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life. It's like, imagine picking, it's like, it's literally like if you were fighting like Islam Makhachev or something like that, and you went, I'm gonna attack his wrist. That's where I think he's weak. And you're like, wait, what? No, like, that's his strength. What do you mean ththey thought this, they'd go, they bring it up and go through all the candidates. They go, he hasn't even pledged to go visit Israel. And then
these guys
what?
can play by the rules. Not many rules, but you
They
can't
all go to
grapple
Israel.
alone. No
And then
wrestling of any kind.
He says, I'll stay here in New York.
Permitted.
He goes, I'll talk to Jewish people who are right here in New York City. I don't need to go to Israel. And then the funniest thing is, it helped. Well, they actually thought
push kick there
that
to the body.
Pointing out that this guy, which by the way, the mayor of New York City has nothing to do with foreign policy anyway, right. But they thought that pointing out to everybody that this guy doesn't carry the baggage of supporting the war
so
party,
a quiet pedestrian
but we all
start to this
support
fight,
the war
DC.
party,
Maybe
was
too
gonna
much respect
win
on both
over
sides.
liberal New Yorkers. Like how
You saw it in
touched
the
do you have to
build-up.
be?
They were
And
hugging
this is
as the
I gotta
weigh-ins.
say, just something
It's
that's
almost
so
like we're watching
fascinating
Prince.
about the whole
You guys are
broader
here to
Israel
fight.
Palestine
Get
and
going. Start to
debate
implement the game
discussion
plan that you
is
worked
that
on
he
over
goes
the
at one
course
point,
of the
he
last
said that
8
he's like a
weeks of
one-state
fight camp.
solution guy. And for people who follow this stuff, there's some people believe in the two-state solution, some believe in a one-state solution, some believe in status quo, which is part-time forever or whatever. But he goes, I think Israel has a right to exist as a state with equal rights for everyone. Like everyone gets equal rights. And they tried to make that out to be like an evil statement, which was so hilarious to me. This one guy goes, I believe in equal rights for all, and they're like, Nazi. Look at this Nazi with his equal rights for all talk. Anyway, nobody, it just has no effect on anything other than to just be like,
courtesy of the
he
body
also
work of his
doesn't
opponent.
have the baggage of
The
supporting
wherewithal
this
to go to the
genocide,
body
which is
and
very
the
unpopular.
discipline
So,
to stay with
okay.
that approach.
And so anyway, it's just like,
it's just
well, he's
tremendous.
focused on
You
the
see a
actual
fighter with a
crisis, which is
high
the
fight
unaffordability
IQ,
of New York City.
following the
They're
game
talking
plan,
about
and it's
supporting
working.
this war, which has nothing to do with the role of the mayor anyway. And it's just like, you look at it, you can't believe that that's actually what they tried
to get a good
attack
beat
him.
on his opponent.
And so, yeah, he
Figures
won.
the
Well, I
timing,
think
now
they're
he's been
terrible.
driving
young
kick
people
after
that are
kick
popular.
into his opponent.
Yeah.
Like a young person who's a really good speaker, who's popular, who has ideas that, look, if you're living in New York City and you're struggling and someone comes along and says the problem that you're having is
Another beautiful combination there, DC. If this is not his best striking performance in the UFC,
that sounds really attractive, and there's a lot more of them than there are of the rich folks, and they'll vote him in.
Combinations come.
Yeah, well, that's right, and especially there's the reason why socialism is becoming so attractive to young people. And I think it's like what I was laying out before. They can't afford anything. There's no path for them to get into the ownership.
The calf kick has
Not just
effectively
that,
changed the
it's
game, and I'm not sure he wants to take too many more of those.
taking away
Well,
all
you
jobs.
might consider switching
I'm sure
stances
that's
or something
My
to try
kids
to eliminate
talk about it.
that
A
attack
lot of
from
the
coming
kids
in his
that they go to
direction.
high school with talk about it. I talk to college kids that are talking about it.
Throws that T,
I was
Bennett
talking to this guy about it. He's like, I really don't know what to do with my life because it feels like everything's going to be taken over by AI. That's a crazy place to be. Like you're waiting for this thing to come alive and see what it leaves behind.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's going to be this all-consuming thing. And then their solution that everybody talks about is some sort of payment plan for everyone, some universal basic income payment plan where everybody gets paid. But boy, does that stop the cycle. But when you're completely reliant on the state to pay for you and you just live, you just exist, and you don't need to work anymore because AI is taking off all the jobs and now you don't have any purpose and you have to go find a purpose. Well, some people are going to find a purpose. There's a lot of people that just have that go-get-'em instinct, and they're going going to be fine. There's a small percentage of people that are just going to plow ahead regardless of, even if the government gives you $50,000, $60,000 a year and you live fine, you don't have to sweat bills. There's going to be a bunch of people that just get into drinks. And they'll like
Appreciate it, Cameron.
and they have
I just got the game today.
They have nothing to do, and you're going to have to like refigure out how to structure society. That's what these kids are going through. They're going through this weird feeling that everything is about to fall apart right in their face. While we run face first for that clip. We're running right to the edge of that clip. Full clip, saying we got to go over the clip.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of these things all happening at once too, and also the young generation is totally outside the corporate media, and they're just not even listening. It's not like do they watch MSNBC or Fox News? No, neither. They don't.
The list of the age, like there's a graph that got put out of the median age for people that watch cable news versus podcasts, all these new different things.
I don't know if I saw the graph, but I've seen these numbers.
I think I have it on my phone. It's fucking jammed because the median age for cable news
Well,
is
at this
like
point, that is as
70.
bad a cut as I have seen in some
It's like
time.
70-year-old.
I think you got to
That's the
call in the
median.
ringside position.
It's hard to
And
watch.
with
John, like, that's why
podcasts,
I
it's
turn
like
my face when I
24
see
to
stuff like
34
this. It's
is the
disgusting.
median.
It's like
YouTube
overreach.
is like 34.
It's like when we see these types
Netflix
of
is a
cuts
little
like
higher.
this,
Netflix
it's
is like
hard
in
for me
the
to watch it
40s.
because I know
Everybody uses
that the
Netflix.
only thing that can happen.
Yeah, average media landscape. So cable news, 70. Primetime TV, 65. Those are the brain-dead people laughing at terrible sitcoms and watching whatever the fuck else is on. Newspaper, 60 years old.
Looks like
Talk
someone
radio,
took a red
58.
Sharpie to his side. A lot of bruising
52.
courtesy of those body straps.
Podcast
Big
34.
kicks, big punches. He's doing
That sounds
everything
better.
he
You
told
might be
Cynthia to
right.
do
That is right.
to slow
That's
this guy
about
down. You
accurate.
see his
But there's a
opponent
lot, you
starting
know.
to really
Now
be
we go
labored
and then
in
go
most
and
of his
see, because I
movements.
have looked at polling data on this, where you go look at who's supporting Israel.
Both fighters
Those
exchange the
cable
pocket
news
here.
watchers.
Yeah.
It's the 70 and over crowd is who they still
So
got.
a much different
What I
approach
would
for
be
him here in the
interested in
second
seeing
round.
is
He was
like
a little
what
bit tangled in round
percentage
one,
of
a little
people
bit of a
that are
feeling out process.
34
Now
are
he has
listening to cable
clearly
news.
found his rhythm, found the
Is
range.
there
We'll see
a
if he
number
can
on
continue
that?
with more activity here in round two.
Three of them
Oh,
cost
the
money.
damage just continues.
Right. Cable costs money. Right. Primetime TV doesn't though, right?
His opponent seems to be
Yeah,
on
they
his
do.
way out of the
Newspaper costs money. Online costs money. But everybody, you have to pay for cable if you want it. And most kids don't have cable anymore. Most kids just get a Netflix account or a Paramount
Well, defense
account,
wins
and you get all the
championships, and
great
perhaps he can
shows.
shore some
Disney
things up
Plus,
there. Here's some
you get all
replays
the
from the
superhero
damage.
movies. Most people don't. You know, young kids, if you have to budget and you have a choice between, you know, a bunch of channels that just have things running on them all the time, or you pick what you watch and anytime you want to.
He's like, I need the internet. Just give me the internet.
They want the fucking internet on their TV. They want Netflix. They don't want this cable news nonsense where I have to listen to someone at 8 p.m. and then every 5 minutes there's a fucking commercial. You have to be, like, brought into that world and accustomed to it.
Yes.
You try to show a kid a commercial today and they're like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And even just the whole fake thing.
All right, so now we
The
start
whole
to
just
see
fake
some
thing
redness
about the
underneath the elbow.
presentation
You
and
gotta
all
think
of
he's
this,
gonna
it just doesn't
attack
work
the
if you
body with
didn't
all of
like,
his strikes.
if you didn't transition
opponent has
from
not
like
done
local combat into that. That's not going to work for you anymore. But I do think this is like
It's one thing to land
it's
a
you
hard
know,
shot.
this is
It's another
looking at this
thing
the other day
completely
though,
to
where it's
land
like,
a
which is really,
perfect shot.
even to
That
me,
was a
is
perfect shot.
kind of something I would not have been able to even
Well,
fathom
he
or
was setting
predict
up
a
the
couple
hooks
years
early
ago.
and often
But
tonight.
the
Watch for him to
way
try to set it up
in
again
which
here.
every demographic has turned
So that
against
cut
Israel
continues.
over this shit. Except essentially boomer Republicans who are still as strong as they've ever been in supporting them. But Israel is,
Well, he continues to offer up
it's
the kick
really
here,
in
but
many ways
just
like
misses
the
with that
third
one.
rail of American politics. Like, this is the thing you are
There's
not
that hook
allowed to
again.
talk
This
about.
time
This
it's
is the thing that would
blocked.
get you fired from CNN, would get you kicked out of D.C., would get you
Well, it's been a wild
career
fight thus
ruined.
far.
You
Perhaps
know,
a
Pat
contender
Buchanan
for some
made a
bonus
joke
money at
once on
Fight's
the
End.
Rockland Group, like years ago, like decades ago. We had a joke once where he said something about, he said Congress is Israel-occupied territory or something like that. And he, for the rest of his career, this was the scandal. This was, hit pieces were written about this. Now, the young people are totally outside of that ecosystem. And they're just hearing
Nice
from
job
different
by him
people.
defensively
And
there.
they're like, no, I'm not buying that. And And it's, you know, I think it's a mix of a few things. Like, I think it's
Look at the redness now, almost
that,
immediately on the
fixed
right side of his
technology.
body.
It's in 4K. You can see what Israel is doing to Gaza. It is so hard, damn near impossible to find a way. And some people do, but it is really difficult to find a way to do it. Actually, it's been going on for years at this point. And then the second thing is just that, like, the relationship between the U.S. government and the Israelis is so freaking bizarre that once you see it, and once a whole generation of young people see it, it's like impossible for them to unsee it. And you know, it's just too weird.
New York City mayoral policy.
Yeah, like it's just, and the idea that it is, you know, the idea that it's just accepted as normal that the politicians for your country must worship this other country.
We now go inside the octagon where
did
Bruce
that other
Buffer
country like
has
beat
the
us in a
official
war
decision.
and they're occupying us
Ladies
now?
and gentlemen,
And you're like,
referee
no,
Herb Dean has called
you're
stop
the
to this
superpower.
contest at
They're
3
your
minutes,
welfare
36
country,
seconds
you
of
know?
round number
But yet
3.
you must go
Declaring
kiss
the winner
their wall. You must say, Tammy Bruce from the State Department. And I know she was kind of being tongue-in-cheek, but where she goes, we're the greatest country in the world,
There
we're
is the
second
man of the
greatest to
moment,
Israel.
and what
I'm like,
of a
what?
moment
Is she
this
being
must be like
tongue-in-cheek?
for
I don't
professional
know
athletes, right? I know
exactly.
you
She
enjoy
kind
the
of,
birth of your
it was a
kids,
very,
right?
it's
Yeah.
still,
Knock
that is
out
a
a man
weird thing
in a
for
cage
any
fight.
representative
I can't
of
think of
your
anything better.
government to say. If anyone sat there and said, just went, you know, I think America's the greatest country in the world. Well, Finland, I guess, is the greatest. And we're number 2. You'd be like, what? And like, Finland's a cool country. I got nothing against them, but what are you talking about, you know? But really, I do think well, it's the relationship. It's how horrible what Israel's doing is. And it's how clearly it's not in our national interest.
There's also weird stuff. Like, how about this guy that got arrested in Las Vegas?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Alexandrovich or something like that.
So he gets arrested for propositioning a young boy for sex. He gets
was it a boy?
I believe so.
Maybe. Yeah.
Is
okay.
that correct?
I don't know. You know, I read a couple articles about it.
Figure out. Jamie will do a little deep dive on this.
Well, they said that he showed up with condoms, was what I read in the article.
Career Services really meets the student where they're at. We understand that we have such a fluid population, so whether you are entering new
How you feeling? You feel like a man now, huh? You're good.
I see why you did this.
Oh, you got problem.
I like taking perspective.
That's all good. Hey, everybody different, right?
You ready to go eat?
Let's go eat.
Let's go do it, bro.
So what's the name of this restaurant you taking us to?
Dicks. They're gonna pull out your dick and start jerking you at dinner. Like that, right? It's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. I'm Jewish. I hope you guys knew.
Citrus.
Oh, we're underway with the stand-up only fight as we remind you of the rule set here. No grappling or wrestling of any type. Fighters also cannot do any follow-up strikes on the floor. May the best man win, and we are underway.
You know, one person I ever fought harder than my brother. It's like, that's not a fight.
Unable to land with that punch.
You don't think that count? They count. A fight is a fight.
And there he goes, lands another combination. His cardio is so good that it allows him to put forth this type of output and pace.
When his opponent is done at 2, he is stringing together 4, 5, 6 different strikes. You don't do that without having fantastic cardio.
Back to his feet.
It counts.
Oh, no good in the process tonight.
You got trained, man. You got man up.
Those guys came to fight.
No, you ain't got to.
He said go. He ate that kick. He took that whole kick. Hurt again.
Just digs into the
You thought the back of his head was stricken? Oh, okay.
He's ours too. Is that one ours too, or no?
I don't know. I see you, brother. I was good to see you. Take care of it. Hey, he got his own shooting range.
Oh yeah. Let's do it. Okay, cool, bro. Thank you, bro. Which sprinter we check?
Last one.
Okay. Okay.
Gotta make sure you got that shit.
Everybody.
All right.
I got everything switched off.
So you right in the Okay.
No, your cameraman can still.
No, I know my cameraman.
I just want to make room for you.
Yeah, my assistant, he cool.
God, he was coming. He's slow. That's why. All right, bro. So when's the last time I see you?
It's been a while. Hold on, let me think. It was a brand risk in Nashville, right? Bro, I told you I love the brand risk.
Thank you, bro. We're gonna go back to Miami. Though. Miami is brand risk.
It's better?
Yeah, it's better. Could we lower the music? Feels like I'm out. Citrus. Text Sean for the address and send it to you, please. Quick, because I gotta send it to Nina and Sean.
Yeah, I gotta lower that music.
See, you and Sean are
That's my first time meeting him. Hey, Sean cool, but I told you, there's some history there. I don't know if I can say on stream, but not about me. But you see how he talks, and he said some false shit about one of my managers before. So sometimes it just be like alleged shit, right? And he just blurt it out and go into, you know. And some people
Merry Christmas to all of you out there who have lives and hello for Daniel. I know you're not Jewish, but here you are on Jesus' birthday calling mixed martial arts, man. What gives?
J.A., they tell me it's time and a half, and I show up. I'm just trying to get paid, baby. Christmas Day, and we're playing the game. It's UFC Christmas. Look, before it was the NBA had Christmas games, I guess we're fighting on Christmas Day now.
See, he said that it really wasn't true.
It was,
Now lands a kick to the body.
Yeah. But you streamed with him before. You know him before.
Yeah, it's always funny watching the beginning of these fights as guys try to really set the tone of the fight, the ways at which we are going to fight.
Right there.
30K helmet.
All right, so we have got a full-on brawl to start this fight. Any concern that these guys might burn themselves out?
Oh, they're going to exhaust themselves. So we may as well enjoy it right now. Because come the third round, regardless of the weight class, they're going to look like two tired heavyweights in the middle of the octagon.
Oh, yeah. Did you guys go out and party after that one?
Head kick lands out. Yep.
We had a party the last time. Not the last time.
Go.
One of Fenimore fights at the Bruiser. I look like
Beautiful combination there. If you are teaching an up-and-coming fighter about throwing volume strikes effectively, you can do worse than watching the film on this
It's a master class, John. It's a master class in mixing up the target, mixing up the strikes, and ending your combination with a kick.
I appreciate
Ruan Bekov's bleeding from the mouth, Daniel. Looks as though there's a cut on his lip. Thankfully, he's a lot tougher than I am. Fast, hard head kick there.
It's almost like you saw him when he got knocked out.
That was a beautiful hook. It landed perfectly. And it was very bad.
In my opinion, is just getting
All right, so the big storyline in this one, his offensive prowess, particularly when it comes to landing those hooks. And I know you like to play Tony Romo. What do you think of those?
Obviously, it's going to be Jake's toughest fight he's ever fought, but I think he can still do it.
Well, no denying the durability on the other side, but at this point, you just got to find that kill shot and get him out of there.
A lot of times that comes with reps, that comes with taking your time. You get excited, and you want to finish because you think it's right there, but at times you just overswing and you miss a lot. He needs to slow down if he wants to get his opponent out of this fight.
He would have to deal with speed.
Connects now with the 1-2.
Oh, shit.
Nice knee to the body by Ulan Bekov.
Bro, you got rookies, bro. You got fanboys waiting on this.
Head kick blocked. Oh, and he lands another knee there. He has executed that weapon perfectly all night long. He's landed several of them in this round. Really starting to do some damage with those knees. Saved by the bell. That's the end of the round. You heard the horn, and it came just as he was stunned by a huge shot right before the end of the round. So,
imagine we get swapped with Gunther. That's a different story.
Yeah, it's a different story.
We're not doing that. So.
And y'all know my black ass will get shot. And they're not going to shoot him.
all right, second round underway. Well, he's landed a few big uppercuts already. I will bet you $1,000 he sets it up again.
You're not taking my money, J.A. That uppercut is coming. And when it lands, it's going to land and land very damaging.
You too. He'll drink, but not.
Hey, let me know if the Seahawks score.
That punch no good.
Yeah.
They just scored action right now.
Huge connections by him there.
He needs to get on his bicycle, John. He needs to get into space so that he doesn't get finished.
Mark, you're not going to be a Phil Mike.
LOL.
And he's looking for that left hand. Just missed. Champ, look at that redness underneath his elbow. Huge shots being landed on both sides. Oh, he lands a huge knee to the body.
Oh, nice body shot. Big combination. Oh, yeah.
And back to his feet. Down to 3 minutes now to go in the round. Well, this is absolutely the hurt business. It's hard to see which party is more injured, but I think both fighters have been really effective with their strikes in this one.
Yeah, both guys have been affected. Both guys have been beat up. It's a very competitive fight. Let's see who has the heart. It was absolutely perfect, John. Great placement on that uppercut.
I know.
Big right hand.
There's one thing you can't train is hard.
All right, so an opportunity goes by the boards. He had him stunned, nearly finished, and now his opponent has
It's Chibu.
Opponent recovered.
No,
Now he's got to
actually,
deal
I
with everything that he's
after
bring at
6
him.
months of no
He's
training
got
at
the
all.
fight finish.
Yeah, and I'm
Oh, they're trading.
And I went like,
Goes down again. Back to the feet now.
then my knee was
Oh, his knee opening up now. Nasty cut on the bridge of the nose.
Yeah, it's good.
It's like every hour around, yeah. It's my fault. Should have called that. Could have probably left I got meeting in New York, LA.
You cool with Dana White now, right? Yeah. Just have him. Dana's a man. Yeah. He's a man. Yeah. Do you go to the fights now?
I'm gonna go to the one next one, hopefully.
Are you going to the White House?
Bumper has your decision.
I'm down.
Yeah, you got
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Herb Dean has called us off in this contest.
Who do you think's gonna fight in the White House, though?
I think they're gonna. I think they're gonna probably.
McGregor?
Yeah, I think McGregor's training for it right now.
McGregor's like sober right now. I saw a video of him talking.
He's like religious now. Unless that was AI.
I think McGregor fights in the White House, and I think it's wrong.
Oh, all right. Who do you think McGregor's gonna fight?
Look,
Chandler.
Michael Chandler. It could be Michael Chandler. That'd be good. I honestly don't know who would win that though. Michael's got a crazy build. His body is so nice.
Yeah,
Have you seen his body? Like his chest, his muscles better. His physique is great. Connor's just great. Okay. John. Do you think John's gonna fight Alex Pereira?
Yeah, I think that's who John wants to fight, but I think he might fight Aspinall.
Aspinall? You mean ass?
Oh, Aspinall.
But my chat was calling him Ispinall. There you go.
I'm gonna tell you. I'm doing that, but it was a smart thing about it.
So do you think Dane actually got him good?
Yeah, he did on purpose.
Cyril did it?
Yeah, he did on purpose.
Okay.
You can tell he did on purpose, but like if you can't see it, like I said, it's for the belt. It's for the belt.
Do you think some people say Aspinall's overrated? I don't think he's overrated. I think he's good as fuck. Do you think?
All right, we are ready to go here at the start of round one for this stand-up only event. So grapplers need not apply. We outlined the rules off the top, but here's your refresher. No grappling of any type. We also point out fighters cannot do follow-up strikes on the ground. Let's see if the combatants play by the rules here as our first round gets underway.
Who's your favorite fighter right now?
Oh, nice jab there by Topuria.
I like Max Holloway.
Yeah,
I love fighter blocks the punch.
So cool.
Man, but Topuria, bro.
There's that jab from Max Holloway. It's taking long to find a home for that team.
I mean, Max Holloway constantly fights behind the jab.
so we'll keep an eye on that as this fight continues. Oh, man, another huge kick. Oh, shades of Ben Saunders against Brandon Wolf back in the day. A lot of knees, a lot of volume here. I'm not sure how many more he can take.
That boy John Anik is a encyclopedia of knowledge and threw it all the way back. But those knees will definitely take effect the longer this fight goes.
Well, champ, I don't see that well, but it's hard to miss the redness underneath that elbow. A lot of bodily investment from his opponent.
Yeah, it's an investment. John, it may not pay dividends right now, but the more you go there, the more damage you do, eventually it will show itself. And right now it's starting to show.
So 44 total strikes have landed.
Oh my gosh, bro.
Now he's back up.
Another big kick from Max Holloway.
That's what they got that Muhammad Ali at.
That jab hurt him.
You shouldn't have to pay money for people to and then, like, the trainer get, like, so much percent, your manager get 22 in the third, or whatever, and this, and by the time you walk away with, like, 25% of your money, some shit like that, you pay everybody. Yeah, I think it's stupid, man.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I want to say is, I think that it's, I mean, it's a good belt.
Yeah. It's promoting narrative. You know what I'm saying? Promotion. Like that.
Narratives.
Yeah, that belt, that champion. As long as he got the belt, he got all these different belts. It's promoting their promotion. Like, I don't know why they gotta charge the fight. I don't know. They're making money.
Yeah, they are.
Just like you got, say you got a champion, a brand risk. You gonna charge him to keep the belt?
Yeah, I am. No, I'm kidding.
That's tough.
No, I'm kidding.
That would be tough.
No, I wouldn't.
You got a belt? You got champions?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I'm just trying to, this new year, I'm trying to start fresh, get people that people love and see and want to see. Dude, if you guys have any ideas who you guys want to see fight, I have a good budget.
Really?
Yeah, like any celebrity that you want to see box. Trent I'm talking to.
Who?
Got any ideas? Rampage one day, that's my goal. One.
You know, I haven't fought for under $1 million in
That's
over
so crazy.
Over 15
years.
18.
That's crazy. Rampage Jackson.
Yeah. But boxing. But look, I'm gonna tell you something. Can I just be 100% honest?
I'll be honest.
All right. I'm gonna take this ultra. I gotta say this.
Sure.
I ain't no scary ass nigga. But my first boxing match against Shannon Briggs.
Respect you for being transparent.
I'm being 100%. Like I'll do it. I wanna shut him up because you know, fighting MMA so many fights, I don't get nervous. No, I don't get that nervousness no more. So if I do a boxing match, I get it all over again because I've never done it. That's what I want because I feel like my worst fights have been the ones where I haven't been nervous. When I'm not nervous. Yeah, I hate that. I want to be nervous. I want to be nervous on a fight. It just gives you a little bit more. It gives you a little bit more power. It makes you a little bit more faster, right?
I get that.
That adrenaline rush. And I think boxing will do that. But then Shannon.
All right, round one of this stand-up only fight is underway. A friendly reminder of the rules set. Not a whole lot of them, but you can't grapple or wrestle at all. And if the fight does hit the canvas, no follow-up strikes permitted on the ground.
Somebody give me that clip.
Big Liverpool lands under the elbow.
Right early in the fight here, and Nate Diaz off to a pretty good start from going for that left hand.
I mean, and it's powerful. It does not seem like Nate is throwing it hard, but he always finds starting points accurate with that straight left hand. So he kind of feeds the right hand to get you moving where he wants, and then bang, he drops that straight left on you that hurts so many. For Conor McGregor, and you heard the welterweight champion Leon Edwards in the same
prevents any damage.
Shades of James Toney. Always seeing things coming at him. It's such a great defensive fight. Oh, nice kick.
Oh, yeah, dude, when you take it off. Oh, yeah, dude, that was a tough catch.
He's got a good leg kick. There it is.
It felt like in the defender's hands.
Circling to his
I
right.
gave Fuka a prayer.
Big punch
I
landed.
said, okay, well, I told Fuka, I said,
His opponent stayed upright.
I mean, he's still on his feet, but he's not up by much.
Look for him to throw that overhand here again.
and Mr. Fuka's most important game of the season. I told him.
That's the danger in the engagement there.
I told him, I got him.
Oh!
Why? Why?
Right, well, that blow is busting from that cut with each
We recently been on some live stream with some Twitch and Twitch streamers, and it was like something wobbly because we're there.
Oh, beautiful head movement. Slips there. Well, he rocked it pretty good, but he sort of smelled blood in the water, and now his opponent's back.
That blood from the water, you gotta go find the finish. You cannot let him come up with another. He's hurt bad.
And now leather being thrown on both sides. I mean, how about those last 5 minutes? Are you kidding me? Heading back to the corner now. Diaz's corner now. We'll take a look at this. Well, he had a lot more than a puncher's chance coming in. Big knockdown for him in the previous round. DC, talk us through the highlight.
He got in his opponent's face, landed that big punch that put his opponent flat on his...
Aiden got the seat all the way.
You ready to fight? You got to see the way.
Second round here. Snapped off the jab nicely there.
It's a beautiful fast push jab.
You know what that hydration pause?
Great block there. Oh, he lands another strike to the body. Really starting to connect on a lot of shots to the midsection. And these will take their toll as this fight goes into the latter rounds. Diaz has got a bruise appearing on that left side right now. You gotta think that thought he investment is gonna pay dividends later.
It's not. I'm Jewish and I'm doing the dance. But I respect
He loaded up there on his right kick.
Show this cup. Show the cup. Not move. Show this cup. Not move your back, man.
Just missed with the leg kick. Oh, nice job by Nate Diaz yet again to find a home for that left.
Hey, find that left hand, John, and as we have spoken from time to time again, it does not look like he's throwing it hard, but he's so accurate and is hitting so well behind that slap right hand that when he lands a left, it can hurt anybody. That is Nate Diaz at his best.
Well, you know this is the hurt business, and both guys are compromised at this stage of the fight.
Yeah, both guys are compromised. Both guys have been beat up. Both guys have done a great job of landing, recognizing what they wanted to get done, and it showed. This is a very evenly matched fight.
How's that need to do this shit? How you doing?
Oh! Big knee there on the chest.
You're getting my cup back, bro.
Oh, he lands a massive kick here.
It's a lot of crazy shit going on in the world right now.
Well, he was a little bit lackluster in round one. You can't say the same here in this second round. He has really picked up the pace, an uptick in the aggression and the output, and starting to find his range here in the fight. Now his opponent's really on the ropes.
His opponent's on Beach Street. He's hurt so bad. I don't know what he's going to do to stay in this fight.
Oh, big left hook there.
I guarantee you wouldn't be this big.
What this guy is? I don't know.
He's Asian. He's a Hawaiian.
He's Hawaiian.
Big shot.
He just heard him.
He might get finished here. One shot. So he lands again just like we saw in the last round, realizing a lot of success with his Muay Thai.
You know why change it? It's working, and it's working from the very start of the fight. The moment this fight started, you saw the advantage that we predicted was there. He started to take advantage of it early, and now... Great shot, man. Kill shot. They got him going in the fight.
I was walking around there and I said, I said, juice.
Oh, nice job.
These two guys
fight. That lip is nearly torn off of his face at this point in time. All right, let us now get you some replays of all the damage done in that previous round, including the strike that opened up the fight.
Yeah, some nasty strikes landed over the course of that round, and it opened up a nasty cut. He has got to find a way to change some things defensively, or that cut is just going to get worse and worse. And the worse it gets, the more he runs the risk of this fight getting stopped.
Here we go. 5 minutes remain in the fight. Do you believe it? This next round is underway. The previous round, both fighters got rocked. Crowd going bananas. Big opportunity for both fighters.
These are the types of fights that makes it so fun to sit. You don't really stand after you take a hit.
They got the power card. I never got it.
You have like coffee.
That's I don't look nothing like coffee.
No, you're handsome, but your nose is insane nose. If you were eating my pussy and the police on you, would you understand?
Not really. Not, something wrong with it. Because he in trouble, he's like suspended, and they had to have like, so the UFC staff there, and Forrest came up there, so the same shit didn't happen with Sneeko. This mother in trouble, and he's saying whatever he want to say. He was saying a couple of words that I thought was banned. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, man, this is crazy. And he even said it. And, even though I don't give anybody can say it. For me.
I'll rap in the song.
Yeah, that's good.
Here and there. I'm just saying, I don't.
Yeah, if black people didn't want others say, then don't put it in the song. Rap it in the song. But I don't care. But a lot of people do think twice before they say it.
So like, I was playing 2K with my boys, and they had a Mexican friend that was saying it. And I said that they got mad at me. So they're like, oh, like, we're from Houston, you're not.
Oh, real? Is it like that?
I'm from LA. Everybody says it.
Yeah. I'm going to say, with me, you can always say, I'm good.
All right, so here we go with this highly anticipated stand-up only event. You got to play by the rules here. There aren't a ton of them, but there's no grappling of any type, either on the feet or on the ground. Fighters cannot do follow-up strikes on the floor as well, so that bears watching here as round 1 gets underway. And they're exchanging leather early. Oh, with authority, the body.
I'll show him out.
Like Sean Strickland.
It's Sean Strickland.
And she's doubling up on the jab there. And she sticks her head back there. This could be the end.
She landed a massive uppercut that hurt her opponent very, very badly. Oh my goodness!
Nina's gonna make this good. Thanks for helping me.
Yes. I'm just a little bit.
Have you seen anything like it? About a minute into the fight, these women are balling. They are brawling. Somebody's going to go down.
I mean, somebody has to go to sleep. This is impossible pace to keep.
They just think you get it.
Elimination striking at its best. Another great sequence out of it.
She is just throwing everything with so much confidence. Every time she throws, she believes that she is going to land, and to this point, she has done just that.
Vegas, though. Vegas, especially when you're on a strip.
Well, she's been good tonight, but she missed without.
Has the best surveillance in America. Cameras everywhere. That's the good part. In case we get what.
Well, she continues to land to the body, attacking those organs right. Not a lot of protection there, and you're seeing some visible damage now on the other side.
Visible damage. She's done a tremendous job understanding and recognizing where the weakness was, and she has exploited that, and she's going to continue as she tries to get her hands.
Huge strike right there.
Great shot landed. Now she's got to go chase her down. Get another one to finish the fight.
She's starting to put together some significant body work here, and these are going to take their toll as this fight goes on. Trying to hammer that lead leg. Yet another strike targeting that already bruised area on her body. I'm not sure how many more of those she wants to take.
No, she needs to defend these. John, she's got to drop the elbow. She's got to tuck it. She's got to do something to try and deter her opponent from continuing to batter her to the body.
Pretty good sequence of punches to the head by her there. While she lands the strike. strike there, but it is one and
Bro,
done.
the future is
She
now,
is
bro.
absolutely cooked.
She's exhausted, J.A. She doesn't
For real, look
have
at
the
this shit. The
energy
future is now.
to really
God,
go
if you sneak up on
anything
us,
that has
so
any
we get used
firepower
to
for
it,
her. She's
so
done
we
all
like,
that she
don't
could
freak
do
out and shit.
early in
But
the fight.
we are living in the
Lemos
future, and
is
they hold
cut,
us.
folks. Nasty
They
cut
hold
on
back
her
a lot
lip,
of
just
technology.
opened up.
They already got like they already got new technology.
There, probably her best
The
strike of
drone.
the fight.
Her best strike,
Yeah, the
and
drone
you don't
part.
see this type of power from her in this weight class.
They ain't never made
She
no shit like
lands
this.
very
Y'all.
effective.
No, hell no. Y'all lucky y'all get on airplane.
Nah, bro, today you should have seen, bro. I missed my play.
Huh?
Round two
I
here.
live at home too.
All right, so as this round
Bro, you
gets
like home too?
underway, let's
Yeah,
see
but you
if
live
the
you like
high-level
here
action
better?
continues. Both women
I
had their
can't live in the
moments in
desert.
that previous
I
round.
can live in
Now
Arizona.
we'll
I
see
like
if there's
Arizona.
more aggression, and we'll see if one fighter
Oh,
can
is it?
really take control.
I like Arizona a lot. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful straight right hand.
I've been in the Mesa area. Yeah, Mesa.
She has to react.
Mesa,
She has to
Phoenix,
go chase the
Scottsdale.
finish.
I like the people there. Blackstone.
Oh, how is she?
I never been to Flagstaff. Yeah. For real? Is it close?
Just
I
unable to
smashed the
quite
chick
find
next to
that
them.
range. Big
It's
knee
in
there.
Arizona. Oh, no, I never even heard that. Chat, we gotta run up to Sedona. We gotta go to Sedona. Wait, where's Charlotte?
That could be 780.
What? Yeah, the locals, y'all always like y'all like the valet. Y'all like the park in the parking space. You valet. Yeah. You're not cheap. You're not a cheap person, are you? Oh, yeah. He's a cheap guy. Yeah.
Crazy? What do you do? Sean just said I just parked. I'm walking in. Should we start going there? Yeah.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Nah, bro, right there.
Huh?
I had to take like crazy flights to get here.
From for real?
Yeah, I missed mine.
I hate missing flights. Excalibur. I don't think I've ever been inside this casino.
You know them slurs that you just said? Like, what is John done to it?
No.
No, I was telling him something, but then I was like...
Me and Mark, we bros now.
No, so...
All right, so as we get this stand-up only fight underway, just a quick reminder on the rule set: no grappling or wrestling of any type.
They was mad
And
at you.
fighters also cannot follow up with ground strikes on the canvas. So if you knock the opponent down, you've got to follow up with strikes. Very important to point that out here at the beginning of round one.
6 hours.
Hey, bro.
Fight behind a nice jab. Great volley.
Bro, you know you feel bad. I'm flying to the Philippines with me, so we're gonna do survival.
Man, these women aren't wasting any time, and both realizing a lot of success offensively early.
It's a great fight. It looks like it's built in a video game.
Big right hand there.
I'm gonna have to upgrade. Yeah, I'm gonna have to upgrade.
Huge head kick.
Yeah, that's a long fight. I feel bad, but I told him. But yeah, I think I just need to upgrade him to
Kick
business.
lands. Oh, big damaging knees here to the body.
I'm gonna have to upgrade him to business. I feel bad.
No, like, just give me like an extra I don't know.
Jacek swelling now around her jaw, so we'll keep an eye on that storyline as this fight continues, but she has absorbed a lot of strikes to the head thus far.
Hell no, we just saw him. He won't even hit his friend.
Another huge kick is true.
Gone.
I can do a lot of things, but when it
That
comes to
was
fighting,
again.
I'm
Nice
like,
strike.
that was my first time throwing a punch at him.
Alba Eunice's strike attempt there is blocked.
And I was like, that's like, but they both were dropping.
Yeah, she landed a massive hit. The hit had her upper
No,
back.
we go to the Philippines. At the end of May, remember I booked in the
She had her
Philippines?
rocked pretty good, but she
Did
wasn't
you book
able
me
to
a
close
fight
the show.
for
But
Lauderdale?
Taylor reminded she was
No,
suffering. She hurt her very
I'm
badly.
talking about at the
Was
end
not
of
able
January.
to find
Sometimes I have my she's
All right, well, she's landed those hooks at a high clip here tonight. Actually, some fans are starting to call her Mrs. Lineker. I think it's a pretty good name.
Oh, it's a great nickname because they fight in the same style. She's very heavy-footed.
I've never booked a fight. I booked one fight.
Beautiful defensive skills on this one.
What language is speaking?
Both sides, how are they still standing? fight. Oh, huge knee. Big right hand. What a fight so far. That is some severe swelling around her eye right now, and she's headed back. Well, she is unrecognizable with all of that swelling. Let's see if we can isolate exactly what caused it.
What happened to her face, John?
Okay, all right, here we go, folks. This round 2, Knockouts on the Units. And, of course, the great Ronnie M. JJ. Do you believe what we saw in the previous round? I can't believe it, but here is our next round. Both women sat down with us on Thursday. They said they were going to brawl. That's exactly what they did.
Hey, this is hey, bro.
John, I can't.
This could be the end.
She hurt her so bad with that big
Bro, this shit, bro,
I
this shit, bro.
understand.
Bro, this shit gonna cut my legs off. This thing's gonna go.
Mac just can't move the whole time.
That was great head movement. Nice.
Well, this is one of the more active rounds we have seen.
Oh, she's hurt.
Back to the feet.
Hey, bro. The guy
Gotta
that's
think she's
hosting
gonna
the
go
thing.
all in.
I'm gonna see about the
I'm just not sure why
The
she
guy
is.
that's hosting it. I'm just re-embracing him.
It's been a crazy
No.
fight.
No.
Well, hard to see exactly where she is cut, but it's somewhere around that eye area. Doesn't look great.
It's never good to get cut. But right now it's a small one. You don't have to worry about it. You got to protect it.
JJ's nose is cut now, and she's starting to deal with some blood in that area.
Hey, Sean.
You gonna tell me
Get
the
the
big
turtle
meat
in
sounds?
that kick.
Sean, sit down a little bit.
Beautiful combination.
Really nice job blocking that shot.
Well, she was a little bit hesitant in round 1, but she has certainly picked up the pace here.
Let him sit next to Marcus. Oh, thank you.
You know they do this just so you make they do this to make you feel like
You got to use your hands like an Indian because you disappointed me.
what?
Yeah. You don't get it. You don't get silverware.
I don't know. Bro, I'm sorry, okay? Like I don't know.
Disappointed in you.
I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean to. It was like in my head I was like,
Why you say that?
let me just make one punch. And I tried and I got caught. And the one punch
I saw you in the octagon going
I
against.
never thought my split KD. No, first of all, that was
He was aiming at his nipples when you wasn't punching sweat in the back of the head.
D-line, but he was like, oh man, this is real gay here.
Everyone loves you. They're just laughing.